Guys and gals, and welcome. Welcome. So Diablo 4 Campfire chat for Season 5 of Diablo 4 should be starting shortly. I'm a little bit late. I stayed up late last night doing some Elden Ring. Yes, many Elden Ring. Many Eldu Ringu. I do believe we have made it in time, though. I do believe we have. Still got like 18 minutes, so we made it. Ugh. The hell's going on? PC crash? What? That's what I get for pushing my PC too hard, I guess. Well, Hijank just says no signal. I killed my PC, guys. Didn't mean to kill it. Dang. I killed my PC, boys. I didn't even get to put a poll up. Alright, we need a poll. I know you guys are going to see my super secret password. I bet you guys could probably guess it if you tried. Boom, 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 boom. I don't know what the hell just happened, but my computer just had a stroke for some reason. Absolutely amazing. That jank had a straight up stroke. July, my bad. Boop. There you go. June 21st. Thank you, sir. Okay, we need this poll up. I need a poll. I still got 15 minutes. I can make a poll. Boom. There you go. We got a poll. So I think this one is mainly going to be about Season 5 and Season 5 PTR. It'll be interesting to see what that's about. Obviously, we're starting in 14 minutes. Sorry. I'm so late. I got so many things to take care of. But, you know what I do have today for you guys? Because I totally got snapped out of my complacency here. So if you guys haven't seen yet, I finally managed to get them all live on the store. And what do I mean? Look at this. Beautiful, beautiful runes. These are Rune Patches. You can get any of them. There's a discount code going on right now, so if you guys want to get some of these Rune Patches, you can get them for 15% off with the code RUNES. So code RUNES gets you 15% off of just these runes. That was not what I intended to do. Man, my computer's having a heart attack today. But basically, you can get these in patches. They're iron-on patches. I got everything from Zod, Sham, Ja, Burr, Low, Ohm. So you can make rune words, and you can put them on stuff. You know, like, for instance, if you wanted to do Enigma, you would do, what, Ja, right? And then you do Ith. Where's Ith on here? Here, Ja, Ith. And then you do your little Burr rune. Or if you want to do Infinity, you do Burr, Mal, Burr, and then what is it? Ist. Burr, Mal, Burr, Ist. So you got, like, you can basically make whatever rune word you want, right? On top of that, I also got the Shaco beanies. So if you guys want to put a socket, a gemstone, or a rune inside your hat, so like you get the Shaco, right? And then you could basically throw a, you know, like maybe you want some more resistances, and you throw a rune in there, right? Socket a rune right on there. Or maybe you want to put a freaking Burr rune in there for extra damage reduction. Well, no, whatever it is. They're, you know, no, they be what they be. They're pretty nice, though. Like, let me pull up the Zod rune. As you can see, they're embroidered. These are not just, like, crappy little patches. They're embroidered patches. Buy one, get one free? I wish it worked like that, Cyber. It's not really how it works, my friend. Your mama gonna get one for free? Whoa, whoa, whoa. Why does this feel so long here with the 7 minutes? Maybe it's because I rushed up here. I rushed up here and now 7 minutes feels like eternity. Eternity.
Season 4 is going to be the biggest update we have ever made to Diablo 4 since it has launched.
Our focus on Season 4 is to really make a lot of evergreen updates to the core systems of Diablo 4.
In Season 4, we're ramping the intensity across the seasonal and eternal realms through a collection of new activities aimed at ensuring the moment-to-moment gameplay experience is as exciting and rewarding.
Why are they showing us the Season 4 trailer? I'm kind of confused. I don't understand why we're looking at the Season 4 trailer. This was what they showed us at the beginning of Season 4.
And along the way, solving a lot of things that we've seen continually from our community that we agree with are pain points of our existing item system right now.
So in this new itemization system, we're focusing on narrowing down the scope of the base affixes. They're going to be a lot simpler, they're going to be fewer in number, so you can much more easily parse whether this item is useful for you, and if it is, then you can take it and further upgrade it and customize it to your own specific build. Tempering is a new system that allows you to really customize the gear that you find. In order to temper, you will need to go to the blacksmith and then choose the recipe that you wish to temper from, and then a random affix from that recipe will be attached onto your gear. Tempering recipes can be found from almost all of the content throughout Sanctuaries.
So you will actually be looking for tempering recipes that go directly with what you're envisioning. Maybe you're thinking, I'm going to play a Frost Sorceress. There are also going to be recipes that are more generic and maybe are just generally good for the Sorceress, but you'll be able to choose which one you think is going to be most powerful with the build you're making for your class. We're making a pretty radical change to the Codex of Power in this season, based again on the feedback that has been coming from our players.
Now, every single legendary in the game will be entered into your Codex of Power so that you can continually imprint the best possible version of that legendary onto your gear.
So going forward, there will no longer be carrying around all of these aspect crystals in your inventory. It's all going to be in the Codex of Power. So part of the final system that we have is going to be greater affixes. What's a greater affix? Well, we want to keep it compelling that there are some drops that are even better than the others when you're trying to get the perfect build at endgame. Because of this, in World Tier 4, and only in World Tier 4, when an ancestral legendary item drops, there's a chance the affixes on it can roll as
And they chose to show
affixes.
75% fire
With bigger
resistance, which
values
nobody
that are
wants.
normally available for that affix.
Greater affixes are fairly rare, but they're not impossible to find. While leveling up, you're going to be able to find upgrades much more easily with this new system.
Another part of itemization is going to be masterworking. Now, this is something really intended for that very high end game, again, World Tier 4. This is where a player is going to take an item, already has the affixes that they want on it, but now they go through a process of upgrading those affixes, getting even higher values on them.
Masterworking really starts at level 100. Once you've already completed your build and found some of the best items, you're going to be able to test your build against the powerful enemies of the pit.
The Pit is a new endgame system that has been added in this season that is going to challenge players that feel that they have largely maximized their build.
By pushing into more difficult tiers of the pit, you're going to be able to unlock rarer crafting materials to masterwork your gear even further.
You're gonna have to play some of the hardest content in the game, but once you do, if you're successful, you can go and make those affixes even stronger.
In Season 4, we're ramping the intensity of the HellTides through the inclusion of a variety of new activities, the first of which is a doubling down and rise of the cultists' presence throughout the tide. You're going to be running through the HellTide, seeing the cultists just conjuring up swarms and swarms of demons, adding to that sense of manic and chaos that they're pretty well known for. The other archetype that we're adding is the presence of the Doomsayers, who were unfortunate enough to be caught out in the tide and basically just lost their minds to all of the mania going on around them. And lastly, rounding out the new activities are just the inclusion of the Iron Wolves. They're finally joining the fight. It could no longer stand in the sidelines, seeing the HellTides and Hell's forces intensify their assault on Sanctuary. As Season 4 players engage and progress through the Call of the Wolves seasonal activity, they'll earn honor with the Iron Wolves, unlocking access to a vast assortment of rewards to accompany and empower your Season 4 journeys. In the updated HellTide, for players who are able to stay alive long enough, they'll be paid a visit by the Hellborn, former heroes of Sanctuary who have aligned with the forces of Hell to attack the allies they once aligned with. Players who are able to take down the Hellborn will be acquiring the materials they need to engage with the new premier HellTide activity, the Accursed Rituals. Located in the HellTide, these Accursed Rituals are pretty much just botched rituals from the cultists that players will be kickstarting for themselves, drawing the attention of all the nearby HellTide monsters in this kind of all-out battle. One of my favorite themes for these ambushes is the Hellworm. It's literally a giant hell slug beast that emerges from the ground and it spews out a whole bunch of mobs at you. If you're able to survive that, you'll be paid a visit from the Blood Maiden, our brand new HellTide mini-boss and one of the ultimate challenges in the new experience.
So I think I'm actually most excited about this season because of what you're able to do with your old characters, how they can integrate with this new item game and take them to new levels of power with this system.
I think that the best part of this update is that you're going to be really empowered to build the character that you want to play. You're going to be able to pick custom affixes and enhance your character in a lot of new and interesting ways.
Begins May 14th. Oh man, I missed it.
Happy Friday, Diablo community. Welcome to another Diablo 4 Campfire Chat. I am Adam Fletcher. I'm joined here by a very familiar face, Mr. Adam Jackson.
Hello, hello.
The Adams have invaded. We've taken over. We have taken over. We actually are joined by one additional person, and this person is tuning in, patching in. I don't know what the phoning in. I don't know. From Albany, Blizzard Albany, and that's Mr. Dan Tangway. Dan, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure thing. Hi, I'm Dan Tangway, and I'm one of the lead seasons designers for Diablo 4. And yeah, we've got a lot of exciting stuff to share with you.
Awesome. Great to hear from Dan. Dan is kind of like melting in Albany. I believe it's very, very warm up there. It's actually warmer there than California, which is kind of crazy. But
it is, yeah.
Look at this. Adam and Adam.
Ooh, I love it.
We did it.
No more Joes.
Yeah, no more Joes. Where's Joe Pipora? Not here. He's actually on vacation, so that's the reason why he's not here. But we have a lot to talk about today. We are actually going to be talking about Season 5 in the PTR. And we do want to, there's been a lot going on with Diablo 4 over the last couple months.
Yeah.
Obviously, Season 4 is launched. We had our mid-season update last week. We introduced pets. Which is really cool. No one expected it, but we did introduce pets within Season 4. And at the same time, we also had our release date announcement for Vessel of Hatred, which is October 8th. Yep. So lots and lots and lots of cool stuff that's going on with Diablo 4. And we have more to share today, but of course, with PTR, we do need to talk a little bit of the housekeeping stuff to make sure that players are aware of it and when it's going to start. Currently, we have Season 5 PTR actually starting next Tuesday, and that is on the 25th. It will run for 1 week, similar to the Season 4 PTR. It is PC Battle.net only again. It is just easier for us to be able to get builds up and get things out and get feedback in really quickly when we have it on PC Battle.net. So that will be going live next Tuesday. Everything that we're talking about today will be in a blog that will go live after the stream, as well as patch notes will be going live after the stream, and they're pretty beefy in themselves. Or in it. I don't know. It's Friday, you guys. We haven't done a Friday stream in, I don't know, it's been a while. It's been a long while. For feedback, though, we will be opening up our PTR forums for players to actually be able to submit feedback. So the Diablo 4 forums will have a special section for PTR. And then separately, if you do want to leave feedback on other avenues, such as like Reddit or the Community Sanctuary Discourse, ways of players being able to provide feedback specifically from that end. For this PTR, we will note that this one will be a little different than Season 4 in regards to how you can start off characters. There will still be character boosts like what we had with the Season 4 PTR. I believe it's actually moved to a different city. I can't recall. I think we had it in Kiyovoshad before, and I believe it's in a different city, and I don't recall which city it is. It's in the blog, though. But all that information will be there after the stream. Separately, we did incorporate a character copy feature, but we initiated this character copy already. No one knows this, but as of yesterday, characters were copied from your accounts over to PTR. So it gives you a little bit of variety of being able to take over some of those characters that you've already built out. Or, you know, if you want to, you can still use the character boost. I will note, we do want players to be experiencing it in like a variety of ways, like whether using your your current characters that we're copying over, or if you're using some of the character boosts. We do recommend, or if you want to level up from level 1, too, like that's another option as well. It allows us to get feedback from all different aspects, so we do recommend, you know, trying it out in different ways and providing feedback of like how things feel, how things flow within the PTR itself. So that is all kind of like the general housekeeping notes that we do have. Oh, and I will say that I believe we actually did correct that Codex of Power reset thing as well. Oh, okay. So yeah, I remember that was plaguing some people last season. We did correct that, so it won't reset. I believe every single time you end up like creating a new character or boosting a new character, I believe. And then separately on the forums, we will have a known issues list. Because they're, you know, it's PTR, it's an early build, so we want to make sure that people are aware of that. And with PTR, you know, when we take in feedback, it's great for players to be able to like provide all various forms of feedback. I will say by the time Season 5 launches, we will try our best to get as much of that feedback in. If it's something that's like a massive, like, oh, like a huge overhaul or something like that, I wouldn't expect it in Season 5, but it is good to hear that feedback because it might be something that we end up incorporating maybe in the future for like a future season from that end.
Yeah, it's very useful. So it totally helps us drive future decisions, and even we did a lot of reaction to PTR feedback in Season 4. If I remember right, we did like a whole lot on our team at least, and I expect the same for Season 5. So
exactly,
send it in; it's very useful.
And then one last thing I do want to note is because players have probably seen when Season 4 is ending, which is currently in early August. You can see that kind of like on your character select screen when you're jumping into the game. I will note that Season 5 is a little bit shorter of a season than what we've had beforehand. Season 5 itself will run until that October 8th date with Vessel of Hatred, because Vessel of Hatred is actually the start of Season 6. So we did want to at least clarify, make sure, because we've heard a lot of those questions of like, hey, is Vessel of Hatred hitting in the middle of Season 5, things like that. So we did want to note that from that end. But enough of the housekeeping notes. I know a lot of players want to hear about Season 5 in itself. And so Mr. Dan Tangway from the sweltering city limits of Albany will be walking us through Season 5.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, let's dive into the new features on PTR for Season 5. Just to give you a little bit of context, you know, we did some early brainstorming for Season 5, and we knew that, you know, we needed to build out the end game. So end game, you know, we've heard y'all that end game is very important. And Season 4, we added the pit into the end game, and some people have been playing HellTides into the end game, but we still want to expand the end game a bit more, right? So if it's an end game activity, we definitely need something that's rewarding and very replayable. We also wanted to make something with a lot of monsters. I mean, monster density and just entering that feeling of flow state's really important for players. We needed something that had stakes, and we wanted players to push their luck. And finally, we really wanted to return to Hell. You know, previous Diablo games let you return to Hell after you defeat the big boss, but Diablo 4 hadn't done that yet. And so with all those goals in mind,
we haven't killed the
let
big
me
boss yet.
introduce you to the Infernal Hordes. Now, let me give you a quick summary of what the Infernal Hordes is. It's a wave-based gameplay mode with survivor-like choices in between the waves, and it'll culminate with an all-new boss encounter. And then the rewards build on top of itemization 2.0 that came in Season 4. So, now how do you go about confronting the Internal Hordes? How do you get back to Hell? I think we can queue up some footage, and then I'll talk you through some of the ways you get back to Hell. All right, first off, you're going to unlock, you know, the activity for Hell with a brisk Eternal quest line starting at World Tier 3 in Zarbinzet. That's where you need to go in the PTR. Now you need a new type of key called a compass, which you can see down in the inventory below here. And like Nightmare Dungeons, the compasses all have a starting monster difficulty and a number of revives. And there are 8 levels of difficulty with escalating challenge and rewards. As you can see, it's a very Nightmare Dungeon-like flow here. And then compasses can be upgraded to higher tiers with all new consumables called Abyssal Scrolls. So you'll get a chance to play with all these new features when you're in the PTR. But let's really talk about the gameplay itself. And I think we've got some footage of the wave-based play that we could show off here. First off, gonna have a lot of monsters. Now, you have one monster here. This is the start of wave 1. And so you defeat this Aether Fiend, and it's gonna drop something called Burning Aether, which is a new currency. Now, this new currency is specific to Hell, and you use it to unlock the spoils of Hell at the end of a run. And at the end of each wave, there's going to be what's called the Infernal Offer. So let's get through this wave and we'll take a look at the Infernal Offer. Now you see these hands reaching out from Hell itself, and they're tempting you with a choice. You're going to choose the form of your destructor. You're going to pick a boon and a bane that impacts the rest of your run. And so now you've chosen a boon and a bane, and yeah, that's going to modify the gameplay that comes up next. And so here you're jumping into one of the new activities that also unlocks Aether in this. And this is a Soul Spire. It's pretty similar to a Hell Spire that you'd see in HellTide. And you have to kill a number of enemies within that ring in order to be able to earn an Aether. And you can upgrade Soul Spires from the Infernal Offer as well if you like. And then finally, what you need to do is complete the number of waves in order to be able to confront the boss. And so you see in this particular run, you're at 5 of 5 waves. So you are just about ready once you defeat this wave to go confront the new bosses for the Infernal Hordes. So we'll finish collecting our Aether here, find our last number of enemies, and I think we're good. I think we're ready to go. So let's take a look at our new bosses. I think we've got some cool art to share here. So these are the Fell Council. There are going to be some familiar faces for Diablo 2 players. They are resurrected versions of the council members from Diablo 2. Now, for those of you who didn't play Diablo 2, the council members were former high priests of the Zakarum, and they had promised to basically take care of Mephisto after he'd been trapped in the Soul Stone, and he'd been hidden down in Kurast and Travincal. And of course, as it happens, Mephisto corrupted them, both in mind first and then their bodies, and they became demons who are just zealous and serve him without question. And so we thought it was going to be really cool to be able to resurrect them and bring them back for Diablo 4, and they fit great in Hell. We had to tweak their power sets a little bit to fit the D4 combat system. So we gave them new titles and new looks to really reflect their combat specialties.
Yeah, I will say it's incredibly awesome to see these guys come back. You know, it's giving very nostalgic vibes of doing a bunch of, you know, Durance of Hate runs for Mephisto and doing meth runs and everything like that. Exciting. So yeah, it's really awesome to see him back in Season 5.
Yeah, I agree. Diablo 2 is certainly near and dear to our hearts here out in New York. And yeah, we're really glad to have him back, and we hope to see hopefully more returning new faces in the future too. So let's take a look at that boss encounter now. So I showed you a number of members of the Fel Council here. We've actually built 5 of them in total, but you're only going to fight 3 at a time. Now we keep 2 in the hopper basically, and we do that because we want to have a whole bunch of replay associated with this boss fight. And because we're only using 3 of the 5, there's actually 10 variations of this boss fight you can fight randomly as you do your Infernal run. And so we're gonna basically kill them off, and once you defeat one, the fight will actually escalate. Actually, it probably escalates even if you just take down a certain amount of health, if I remember correctly. And it escalates, basically their attacks become more powerful, and then they start really getting even more powerful kind of room clearing attacks towards the end. But we've defeated them here, and this is the reward moment I actually wanted to talk through with you, because this is something that really ties into itemization 2.0. You've got several chests here, and you've got a choice of the rewards you get at the end of your Infernal run. You can choose from a chest that contains all new legendaries and uniques. You can choose from a chest that contains all sorts of crafting materials, including masterworking materials, so you don't need to go to the pit anymore exclusively to get masterworking materials. You've got a chest that allows you just to get a whole bunch of gold. I know people out there are really asking for gold, and this is going to be a good source of it. And finally, even though it wasn't shown here, you have a chest that guarantees a single item with a greater affix on it. And so we thought we'd want to try this out and see how people respond to it. And we thought it would be pretty exciting. You know, certainly in season 4, I'm really trying to get some more greater affixes. So I'd love to have this in season 5. So yeah, let's take a closer look at some of the uniques you can farm from the Infernal Horde, since we're talking about rewards already. So we're going to queue up some footage here. So first up, we've got the Basilisk. And so this is going to be a new unique staff for druids. And so when you hit an enemy with a nerf skill, it'll petrify them and deal physical damage. So turning the monsters to stone, always cool. But it's also cool that you can CC your target and boost your initial attack here. So this one's pretty exciting for you druid players out there. All right, next up, we've got the Third Blade. Now this is a unique sword for barbarians. This one makes your weapon mastery skills be treated as core skills that cost fury. Even though they deal a little reduced damage, this one's pretty exciting because now you can start making all sorts of new builds that you've never seen before. So we're really interested to see what the community comes up with here. All right, next up, we've got the Mordecrux. Now the Mordecrux is a new unique dagger for Necros. So when you consume a corpse, there's a chance that you'll create a skeletal simulacrum that seeks out enemies, and when it dies, it explodes. So essentially, you're making a skelly bomb when you consume corpses, and so that's just going to seek out targets and explode. I think that'd be pretty handy for my Necro this season, so I'm looking forward to that one too. Next up, we have the Umbracrux. Now the Umbracrux is a new unique dagger for rogues. So if you use a subterfuge skill, you'll create a totem. And if you hit that totem with an attack, it replicates any of the damage it takes to all nearby enemies. And so it's a great way for essentially replicating and doubling down on the damage that you're dealing in a particular area. All right, next up we've got the Vox Omnium. Now the Vox Omnium is a new unique staff for Sorks. And so when you cast a core skill, it's going to cast an additional 2 basic projectiles based on the previous elements used. And so this allows you to really start comboing your core and basic skills together. And if you decide to have different elements associated with those core and basic skills, now you can start casting fire and lightning and cold all at the same time. So we're pretty excited about this one too. And the final one we're going to share out here is actually a new set of boots that's available for all classes. And these are called Rakanos Wake. And so whenever you use an ability with a cooldown, you'll trigger an explosion dealing fire damage. And so really, it's pretty straightforward. You're going to bathe your enemies in flames whenever you use a cooldown skill. So maybe I'm going to dust off my Whirlwind Barb here and slap them on and see how it does. So yeah, these are some of the uniques and legendaries that are going in to the Infernal Hordes. I think there are 10 uniques overall and over 20 legendaries that you can farm from the Infernal Hordes. So there's going to be a lot to chase down in there.
That's awesome. Thank you, Dan, for like sharing, going through all that stuff. I know with players jumping in on PTR, especially for and trying out Infernal Hordes and everything, what's kind of like the top things that you really want them to like kind of hone in on, give feedback on, check on for PTR?
Yeah, absolutely. We definitely need feedback on the PTR. It's super critical to ensuring that, you know, the Infernal Hordes and all the rewards feel great for when the season launches. So here are some of the topics that, you know, we could use some help on. First off, you know, just how is the Infernal Hordes gameplay? How do the boons and banes feel? You know, which ones do you like the most or the least? And these are types of things that'll help us fine tune that experience. Similarly, you know, how is it acquiring compasses? Do you have too much, too few? How do you feel about upgrading them? You know, that could help us really dial in kind of the access to the Infernal Hordes. We're also interested in learning how you feel about the difficulty and the gameplay link to the different tiers. Like I said at the top, we've got 8 different tiers of difficulty. And so, you know, we have the ability to dial those in a little bit. We want to make sure that players can really replay this over and over again as they push into the end game, much like the pit. And then finally, of course, how are the rewards? You know, which do you like the most or the least? You know, we can certainly make tweaks on the rewards to make sure they're as enticing as possible.
Awesome. Yeah, and I know with Infernal Hordes, this is another alternative because, as you mentioned, you can jump into it starting with World Tier 3. So if you're actually leveling a new character, you can actually jump into Infernal Hordes, and you're able to earn like experience. So in here, so you actually have the opportunity of like jumping into HellTides if you want to. You can jump into Infernal Hordes. When you get to 85 or something like that, you can jump into pits. So there's now like more or nightmare dungeons, obviously, when you're you're upgrading your glyphs and everything. So there's a lot of different variety now for being able to kind of level up a character, especially as you're going to that mid to late game phase of your character's journey, you could say.
Yeah, something else to bring up for the rewards for the Infernal Horde as well that I want to clarify. So Dan mentioned about, you know, there's going to be uniques that are there that you can target farm in the Infernal Hordes. There's actually going to be a group of uniques and legendaries that you're able to target farm in that piece of content in the Infernal Hordes. So you're also kind of similar to how the normal game works, you know, how you can target farm a unique from a boss, but you can find it anywhere else in the world. It's the same way here where you can get these new uniques and legendaries anywhere, but you have a better chance, you know, if you're targeting them in the Infernal Hordes. And this is the first time that we're doing this with a group of legendaries as well. We have legendary powers that are actually able to be target farmed in the Infernal Hordes, which is actually something a little bit new to the game. So I just wanted to clarify that. And in addition to that, we're also adding new uniques and legendaries to the rest of the game as well, in addition to this.
Yep.
So there's actually a very large group of uniques. I think it's over 50 or something.
Yeah, wait, there's over there's over 50 new uniques and legendaries coming into Season 5.
So we have a lot coming.
It's pretty extensive.
A lot more to talk about there, too.
Yeah, this was just kind of a small preview of what people are looking at here, and they'll be able to jump in more and actually check it out on PTR because all of them will be present there. And I know Adam is actually going to talk through a few additional ones here later. But yeah, Dan, this is awesome. Can't wait for players to jump in. I appreciate you informing and providing all the new updates and everything.
It's exciting.
Yep.
From the sweltering heat of Albany. I mean, I'm going to keep bringing it up. They canceled school up there. It's crazy.
That's nuts.
I'm like, that's absolutely insane. But we will be seeing Dan again here later, especially when we get into Q&A at the end. But Dan, thank you again. I think
you're welcome. Yeah.
Awesome. Appreciate it. And then I think we're going to jump into a little bit of some balance and class updates with Mr. Adam Jackson. So,
yeah, let's get to it. We have a lot to talk about. I think we have, so the topics I'm going to be covering today, we've got unique items. We're going to be talking quite a bit about that. We've got some updates to Mythic Uniques that are very exciting and near and dear to my heart. And then we've got your standard class updates, a lot of stuff coming in Season 5. One thing to clarify here is that we are going to be releasing the patch notes soon, so I'm not going to be going over every single class update because there's a ton of them. kind of similar to Season 4. I'm really only going to highlight just like one major thing for each class on the stream today, but you'll be able to see all the things that we're doing in the patch notes. There's a lot. So first, uniques. We have some quality of life updates here, really targeting how you get uniques that I'm pretty pumped about to announce here today. So you can now target farm uniques from 3 additional sources. You can target them from obol vendors, HellTide chests, and whisper caches. These places where you've always been able to, kind of target farm certain gear slots and not been able to get uniques, and you're wondering, well, why couldn't we do that? That stinks. Well, now you can, and it's awesome, and I love it. So here, just to give some more detail into how this works, is basically when you open, like, I'm just gonna use HellTide chest as an example, right? If you want a specific unique weapon, let's say, you can just simply target the weapon HellTide chests, and you'll be able to have a chance to get only unique weapons for your class from those chests. So when you're targeting a specific thing, you just go to the the place that has that slot, whether it's the obol vendor, the HellTide chest, or the whisper cache, and you'll have a chance to get uniques that are targeted for that slot. So it kind of adds, while you're doing your normal grind of, doing the boss ladder, killing the boss, you can also be collecting obols, doing the HellTides, doing the whispers, and having a chance to target and get that unique as well from that content. And in addition to that, this is also true for Mythic Uniques. So I'll just give an example here of exactly how this works. Let's say that you want to get, Harlequin Crest, a Shaco, or Andariel's Visage. You don't want to target those helms. You could be targeting helms from HellTide, targeting helms, and when you turn in your obols to the obol vendor. And every time, if you get a Mythic Unique, you will get one of those 2 from that source. Now, also to clarify, let's say that you are like targeting gloves for some reason. We don't have any Mythic Unique gloves yet. Then if you were to get a Mythic Unique, you still can. It'll just give you a random one instead, since you can't target one in that slot. So pretty exciting way to target kind of the things that you want while you're farming for the things that you want.
It's going to be amazing.
Yeah,
so
I
know we've heard a lot of players going like, hey, we do the endgame bosses a whole lot. And we're trying to, and you can actually find them just in the open world as well. We've actually seen a lot of cases, especially with this past season, where players are jumping into HellTide and they're actually finding them there. But now it's an additional options for players, which I think will be a lot better for just overall finding some of the gear that everyone
As
really
someone
wants.
who, for the last 3 seasons, my uniques have always come from the Beast and Ice, I am very selfishly invested in getting this into the game.
Yes. So.
All right, let's talk about other unique updates here. We're going to be making a whole lot of updates to our unique items, so I'm going to be covering a lot today. We've heard your feedback, and we're going to be doing some updates here. To clarify, before I go into what the updates are, you are going to be seeing these updates to like the way that we think about and our philosophy around uniques and how they work. You're going to be seeing them in the PTR for the new uniques coming into Season 5. Between the PTR and the launch, you'll be seeing in the Season 5 launch these updates to all of the existing uniques in the game. So when Season 5 comes out, basically all the uniques will get these updates that I'm about to talk about. But in the PTR, you're only going to really see this in the new uniques coming into the game. Yeah, there. So now we can go on to the next part. All right, so the team's been talking a lot. As many of you probably know, in Season 4, when we did Optimization 2.0, we didn't really update the uniques almost at all in the game, right? We didn't do like a big pass to like cover how they exist in tempering or anything like that. So the team's been talking a lot about, what is the role of uniques in Diablo 4? Like, how are they different from legendary items? Because they're kind of similar in that they both give you, legendary power that's really strong. But how are they different, and what do we want them to be long-term? And we've kind of landed on a few things here that I'm going to talk about. The first one is that, they're powerful and exciting items that kind of direct players to builds, right? So imagine you're a Fireball Sork, we've got 2 uniques for you. They really target you. You're going to feel a lot better playing with Fireball when you take them. We want you to take these things and kind of level up your build. There are moments of like very large incremental power where you feel like you're, filling in your fantasy as a class. The next one is that they're kind of pick up and play, right? They're easy to evaluate. The moment that you pick up the unique, you know whether it's a good one or a bad one. We want this to be a little bit different from legendary powers where, you pick it up and you kind of go on a journey where, you make it into something that's really good. A unique, when you pick it up whether or not it's one that you want to keep or one that you don't. And then the last one, pretty obvious, but was worth saying, they're kind of more rare chase items that players don't see very often. When you're going through the end game, you're seeing legendary powers a lot because, we have a lot of reasons to give you a lot of them. You want to upgrade your codex, they are the way that you can, get greater affixes and temper and masterwork them. So there's a reason why you want to churn and look through a lot of them. Uniques, you do want to get a good one, obviously, but not nearly as often as like a legendary power. We don't need that aspect of their design. So they are more rare, they're harder to get, but when you get it, it's kind of like a more exciting moment, like, did I get the perfect one? And then if not, you go and try and get the next one. So let's talk a little about our goals for the update that we're going to be doing here. One of the things that we come to a lot that we talk about on the team is this idea, I like this quote of like, players build their legendaries and players build around their uniques, right? Your legendary power is very, or your legendary items are very malleable. The moment you get it, you don't know yet if it's going to be the best in slot item, but it has a chance to be. But they're also like able to fit in a lot of different ways. You can manipulate their stats via, enchanting, via tempering, and masterworking. And so there's a lot that you can do with the item once you've gotten it. Whereas uniques, they're a lot more static, right? The stats on them can't change. You can't really manipulate them very much. And sometimes they have maybe qualities to them or stats that are a little bit inconvenient, and you got to figure out like, how do I overcome this little detriment or make my build into where it's a plus instead of a detriment, right? Like it's a fixed thing that you have to build around, which is very different than a legendary. Also, ideally, we want players to run 2 to 4 uniques in their build. One of the difficult parts of this, and I think we're going to be continuing to work on with the balance and design of uniques, is that we want you to run some, but we don't want you to run all of them in your build, right? It's very easy to go one way or the other. I can very easily make you run no uniques, and I can very easily make you run like every slot is a unique by making them really, really crazy, right? We want these to fit in such a way that you're running some of them, the ones that are applicable to your build, or maybe some spicy ones here or there that you try and, like make in a special way to work with you. But not all of them. I would say right now, like on live in Season 4, players are running more like 0 to 2 in their build, so it's not as much as we want, which means that we want to update them to make them a little bit more attractive. And another one is we kind of want to move away from these generic fits-all build styles of uniques, right? One thing that I know a lot of players have talked about in the past that we've had is that some of our uniques are just so generically good, and this is particularly scary for us when it's like what we call a generic unique, which is one where every class can use it. And so like if every class can use it and every build can use it and it's better than like the build specific or class specific stuff, then it just becomes best in slot for everybody, and we've taken away your agency and your choice because you're just going to target this item and ignore everything else, right? The only items in the game that we really want to fit that role are like Mythic Uniques, where they're across all classes and they're so good, but they're also extremely rare, so you're very excited to see them whenever you see one. But all the other regular uniques, we don't want to fit that design space. So we're going to be trying to move away from these ones and readjust them and redesign them a little bit where they fit into all kinds of builds and kind of target something that they're really good at or that's a little bit more unique about them and make them really good at that and less generically good at everything.
It's funny because everyone's in the chat going like, oh, rip Shaco, but we just literally,
no.
we just
said. Mythics is not what I'm, they're
yeah.
a different beast here. I'm talking about all your regular ones.
Yeah,
Shaco's still going to be just as good, if not better, honestly. All right, so enough preamble, right? What are we actually doing? So we're going to be doing 2 big updates to uniques. The first one is we're going to be increasing the upper power of the unique effects and the roll range. We're going to be doing increasing the range from an average of 10 to 20 rolls, which I'll explain in a second. And then we're also going to be increasing the upper power of like how much you can get from the rolls. This is really just buffing pretty much most uniques across the board to compete with the new world of legendary powers that we live in, since they got extra power juice to them. Now uniques are catching up. So as an example here, I gave, if an older unique, like one on live, gave you around 40 to 80% multiplicative damage, that's going to go up to like 40, 100, maybe 120, maybe even higher. Really, the mandate is as high as we can get away with without breaking things. And then we're also going to be increasing the roll range. This is like the number of possible rolls it can do from an average of 10 to 20. So it'll be a little bit harder to get basically, what we're targeting here is the discrepancy inside of a unique is a little bit wider, where the difference of like a low roll and a high roll is a little bit bigger, but the high rolls are way better than they were before. So they're more exciting when you get them really good, but it's a little bit harder to get there. And the next one is going to be updating the affixes, the actual stats on the uniques. We're doing a pass on all of them, and this is kind of what we're doing. The first thing is we're changing their stats to fit with the Season 4 updates, right? We're doing the things like we did before of simplifying stats, getting rid of super conditional things, making them just more generically understood and good. We're also going to be adding tempering stats. We're open to really adding whatever we want that makes the unique fit the fantasy. So as an example here, you know, a lot of two-hand weapon uniques have a problem where they're all basically competing against bonus projectiles as an affix because you can just temper that onto your weapons, right? So when it comes to those kind of situations, we'll just slap the bonus projectiles on that unique, and now, you know, it's no longer competing in that way, or we have to kind of dance around it. We can just put it. We're also open to the idea, by the way, of breaking slot restrictions, kind of like we did in Season 2. So you can have bonus projectiles or other things on other slots. You know, like uniques are where we get to play a little bit and just really make something thematic and cool and build defining, and so they have less restrictions than everything else. And the other one is we're updating the stat power levels and the effects. So the idea here that we're thinking, and this is particularly nuancey when it comes to generic uniques, but stats that kind of fit the theme or the fantasy of the unique are going to be like way stronger than your normal stats, right? So as an example, if you have a unique that's targeting fire damage, maybe it's like a meteor or firewall on the sorcerer or whatever it may be, you know, that plus fire damage can be juiced up to be really, really high. But stats that are more like generically good, like, you know, I don't know, attack speed, max life, resist all, those ones aren't going to be juiced unless it fits the theme of the unique really well, right? So we have an example here of one that has been a problem for us in the past, and I kind of want to go through how we would think about it. I'm not going to say exactly what we're going to do here to Tybalt's Will, but kind of give you our thought process, right? So Tybalt's Will, as many of you know, in previous seasons, was kind of a problem where it just became best in slot for almost every build. You know, the famous line we say is that it was, you know, damage on pants, which was, you know, impossible to get almost anywhere else in the game. And it turned out damage on pants was really, really good, right? It also gave you damage reduction, one of the best stats in the game. And then it also gave you it also solved resource in many ways for you as well, right? It gave you a bunch of resource whenever you became unstoppable, which wasn't too hard to do. So it was doing a lot of things at once. It gave you, you know, a very unique effect with putting damage on a slot that you don't get it. It also gave you resource, which is something that every class wants, you know, very heavily.
And Adam, it gave you 3 extra potions.
And 3 extra potions, yes. Now that one, you know, that's all right. But yeah, so, you know, the way that we would tackle this one, to give you an idea, is like, you know, we either would kind of pick, you know, do we want to focus this on the damage aspect, that it's damage on a non-damaged slot, or maybe we focus on the resource aspect and like double down on that and make that really powerful and really cool, or we do like a little bit of both. But if we do both, then it's not going to give you the defenses that another pants slot would give, right? Basically, in our mind, we'd be like, we want to give the minimum amount of defense where it's not just like a trash item because it has nothing. But then after that, not so much. And you're going to have to solve your defenses in other slots or somewhere else to justify getting the damage on this slot, is how we would think about it, right? And so we're having a lot of conversations now. I don't think we're going to nail every single item perfectly in this first pass. So we're really looking for feedback when you jump into Season 5 and beyond, and we'll be adjusting them. But I kind of want to give you an idea of what we're doing and kind of what we're thinking and targeting with this. So I think we can move on. So Mythic Uniques are getting a facelift here. So lots of updates here. Mythic Uniques are now going to be truly mythic. They're getting a new color beam when they drop on the ground. They're coming out with an awesome new sound that you're going to hear in a little bit. We've got new item UI that you can see, so they have a different
Disgusting.
color. They really are going to look and feel like the special items that they are. And we have a video here to show you the sound and what it looks like on the ground.
Yuck.
So you can see here, this beam looks, you know, very different than anything else. Isn't that sound, that echoey sound? I love it.
It sounds like I don't know. It sounds like you're murdering a bunch of like church organs or something like that.
Boobies.
Like,
Boobies. Yucky.
But yeah,
Ew.
so, you know, when this thing drops, you're definitely going to know when you got one. No more like sifting through your uniques to see if it's actually one of the mythics. You'll know right away. So we're really excited about this. Super happy it was able to get in.
Blech.
All right, and last but not least, let's talk about class updates. I'm going to cover some generic things across all classes and then go through a little bit of each one. Again, this is not going to be nearly close to everything that we're doing, just a little taste, a teaser for what you can expect to see. Let's start with things across all classes. One systemic update we're doing to the game is invulnerability skills are now going to start their cooldown when the invulnerability ends instead of when the skill begins. This is really to prevent things like infinite invulnerability and really to open up design space for us on the team, because now we can be more comfortable adding things like, you know, invulnerable duration to skills or cooldown reduction more liberally and things like that, where we don't have to worry about this. This is very similar to, like, you know, what our previous games have done and some other games do, and we think it'll be a good fit here. The idea isn't really to like make it that you can't be invulnerable very often. It's just to prevent like 100% uptime where you actually break down the combat of the game and you're not interacting with enemies anymore. The next one is we reviewed Monster CC, and we generally reduced the CC duration and frequency across the board. So, if you were frustrated by getting frozen for 1,000,000 years and then dying, that'll happen much less often. And also to help with this, potions can be used while CC'd, even while you're stunned. So, while you're frozen standing there and everybody's around you trying to kill you, you can at least spam potion a little bit and maybe survive sometimes. Next one, we've got some bug fixes. These are some of the notable ones. We do have more coming in, but these are the ones I wanted to call out. Rogue Victimize is no longer going to be double dipping on its damage, which is resulting in a lot more multiplicative, or a lot more damage really than it was supposed to have. Damage over time effects were getting double the amount of percent damage that they were supposed to. And Skeleton Reapers were getting both Book of the Dead bonuses when the second option was selected. And again, this is just a little bit of a preview, but we have other bug fixes coming, but these are some of the bigger ones we want to call out. All right, now let's get to the classes. So Barbarian, they have a new unique coming in. This is the Unbroken Chain. This is for you support Barbarians, or really just more defensively oriented ones. Basically, what this is going to do is create a connection between Steel Grasp and Iron Maelstrom, where you'll be able to cast Iron Maelstrom a lot more often as you use Steel Grasp. And also, enemies damaged by Iron Maelstrom are going to be doing less damage for a little while. So the idea here is, you could debuff enemies, debuff those bosses, and make them do less damage to you, so you can survive better. And next, the Rogue. Flurry is going to be getting a lot of big updates. We updated the enhancement and both of their upgrades. So you'll be able to see kind of a theme here going on. Before, you would damage a crowd controlled or vulnerable enemy for the enhancement, then you would heal. Now, when Flurry hits an enemy, you can just make them vulnerable. So actually, Flurry becomes a vulnerable generator here, which is pretty exciting. And it'll also deal more damage as you hit vulnerable enemies. Stacks up really high. So the idea here is with Flurry builds, you want to make everything vulnerable and then just keep whacking them with Flurry and gain a bunch of damage. And now Improved Flurry is changing. Before it was about vulnerable spreading, but now baseline you can just generate vulnerable, so we don't need that anymore. So now Improved Flurry is going to actually give you a dash. So now similar to things like the Shred on the Druid, you can kind of dash to your target, and also every time you cast Flurry now it's going to heal you. So it's going to be a lot more mobile, a lot more awesome. Very cool. And then last but not least, to compete with a dash, what could we do with Advanced Flurry? Well, we can just add a stupid amount of damage and resource cost reduction. So before, you had to evade through an enemy and then do damage with one cast and stun enemies. Now, as you spam Flurry, it'll basically get a big damage bonus, and its energy cost will go down, which will let you be able to spam it even more often. So the idea here is you just want to be using it over and over and over again, and it'll get stronger and stronger and ramp up pretty heavily as you go.
I'm excited for Flurry Rogues.
Yeah,
very excited. Yeah,
Flurry
they're going to be like little hummingbirds
love.
around, bouncing around, and it's going to be great.
Yeah, ironically, I'm playing Flurry this season, so I'm always off by one. Like, I always play the thing, and then oh, we're going to massively make it better next time. But, it's fine. It's fine. Everything's fine. Next, Druid, Shepherd's Aspect. We've gotten feedback from players now for a while now about how, Shepherd's Aspect kind of dominates the meta for Druids, because you're basically it's both not great from a design and a balance perspective. On the design side, we're telling you to put companions on your bar, and then they're actually just buffing you. So, we make this companion build fantasy, but it's actually just making the player better. And then on the power side, you're basically just slotting 3 skills on your bar with your companions, and then not really caring about buffing them or using them, because they're just kind of there as proxies to make you better. So we've changed it now where, basically it's going to be about the companions. So your companion skills are just going to deal damage for every companion that you have. So, the bigger your zoo, the better your zoo is going to perform. And to compensate players, we're doing some pretty massive buffs to Druid skills baseline to compensate. So, your skills are just going to be getting that damage baseline, and in many cases a little bit more. So you can check that out when you see the PTR notes, the PTR patch notes after this. But we basically just buffed everything across the board and made it so that Shepherds isn't required anymore. Next, for the Sorceress, this is Axial Conduit. I'm really excited about this unique. This is your Chain Lightning unique. So Chain Lightning builds, you finally have a unique that really talks to you. And you can see here kind of our stats and that new philosophy I told you about. You have chance to double cast Chain Lightning on pants instead of just a weapon, so that's pretty cool. So basically, the way that this works, we're going to have a video, but I'm going to explain to you how this works, because it actually changes your skill pretty significantly. So now when you cast Chain Lightning, the way it's going to work is it's going to cast and bounce on enemies just like before, but then it's going to come back to you and orbit you a little bit. And then it's going to go out and hit another enemy, and then come back to you in orbit, and then come out and then go out and do another enemy and come back. It's going to do that back and forth a few times. And every time it comes back to you, it's going to drain some of your mana. And after it drains so much mana, after coming back 10 times, the bolt is actually going to explode for a ridiculous amount of lightning damage on enemies. So there's a mini game here where basically, oh, and by the way, you can cast multiple chain lightnings when this is out. You're basically going to be like running a gambit here, and the mini game is you want to stack as much resource regeneration as you can so that your lightning bolts can survive being drained over and over and bouncing everywhere so they can last to their explosion and do a ton of damage to enemies. One thing I want to call out here also is that because it drains mana, resource cost reduction won't work on that drain. You're actually going to want to focus on gaining resource, which is a little bit different and kind of makes this build a little special, I think, and unique compared to other resource.
I like this one.
Builds based around resource. So now let's see it in action here. You'll see what one cast looks like, and then I think we'll see what it looks like when you spam it. So you can see here, it circles you, goes and hits enemies, circles you, goes and hits enemies, and then it does a big explosion at the end that we've tuned the damage to be pretty high. See there? So then it explodes. So, oh wait, oh, do we have one where it casts a bunch of times? Maybe we don't. There we go. There we go. Yeah. So see here, you can see that, as you go, like, keep going, and then explode a bunch of times. Another thing I want to point out is if you're hugging enemies at melee range, as it's circling you, it will also hit enemies. So you now have a way to like really maximize your damage by hugging bosses and such. The damage goes way up. So next, last but not least, the Necromancer. So we got some feedback. We've had this for a while and felt this on the team where, the Golem we really love. We love our Golem boys. And, but sometimes it can be frustrating where you tell the Golem to go somewhere, and then it kind of takes a while to lug his butt over there and do his slam or his shout or whatever, and, things can get in the way. And so we've kind of upgraded him a little bit. I'll let the video speak for himself here. But so now you can see your Golem will Hulk smash and just jump on enemies and slam them down. So this will work with all of your Golem types, by the way, not just the Iron Golem, but now your Golem is going to leap to the area that you tell him to go and then cast its ability. So we're really excited about this. Shout out to Charles Dunn who got this change in, and our animators who helped us out. But we're really pumped for it. It looks amazing.
Yeah, so those were the class and balance changes, and I know we jumped a slide there. How dare you, so production? Good. No, but we are, as they wave to me like, I'm sorry. We do want to go into some quality of life updates. We do have a significant amount of quality of life updates we do want to go through that will be available in Season 5, and you guys will actually be able to check this out in the PTR. So now we can go to the next slide, where we do want to talk about some HellTide and Whisper updates specifically. So I know this has been kind of at least it's been a pain point for me, and I've heard it's been a pain point for others, is that as you guys are going through HellTide, there are Whisper objectives within there to help you with your progression on your Whisper bar. But the issue with the ones in HellTide is that it can sometimes take quite a while to do. And sometimes players would have to leave the HellTide to go to another area to complete some of these Whisper objectives. So we are optimizing this to ensure that they don't take nearly as much time. The ideal goal is to get a bunch of value within those 15 minutes to potentially end up getting a full entire Whisper 10-point bar within 15 minutes in one HellTide.
So you can do a full Whisper every HellTide.
Yeah, so that'll be it'll be a huge help, because I know at least for me, I've always had to kind of leave a HellTide and kind of try to knock some of that out. It'll especially help for players that are looking for additional gold, because Whisper caches have always been great sources of gold. And now, as Adam mentioned, you can also use Whisper caches to target farm.
Ooh, baby.
So it's keeping things more optimized for players, which we know will be way better there. The next thing we do want to talk about is also Baneful Hearts. I know this may not sound like a huge quality of life thing or a buff of any sort, but we have noticed that players have had a lot of Baneful Hearts within their inventory. We do want to make these a little bit more valuable so they won't drop as frequently. We know that players will still have a significant amount, but maybe not hundreds and hundreds like some people have within their inventory. But players should not have any type of issues regarding having a ton of these Baneful Hearts. But we are tweaking the drop rate because they were dropping a little too much there. Tempering. Yeah. The very, very, I guess, brought up topic. Well, and like
yeah, people like talking about tempering.
It's pretty popular.
Yeah, so I want to take a minute to talk about tempering and kind of how the design team sees it and kind of what we're happy with, what we think could be better, and some adjustments we'll be making in Season 5. So first, high level, kind of how we see tempering. We really think that it's important that items have an endpoint where players know kind of that the item is done and that they're not hoarding lots of them forever on the chance that they can all be good, right? One of the big key goals of Season 4 was that we didn't want you saving 1 million items in your stash space. And while we know that, bricking an item never feels great, we do need that to be something that's possible to do in the game so that you know when the journey is done and you're not just holding on to an item forever. So that part we actually think is working very well, where, an item is done and you try and go get another one. And so you're always interested in items and trying to, have that game loop go in the game indefinitely. Or until you feel like your character is maxed out on its power. But we do agree with players that, the RNG right now is like completely out of their hands, which doesn't really feel great. You get so many tries basically to roll, and then that's kind of it, and you're done, and it doesn't feel great. So we're looking at ways in the future for players to have more control over that RNG so that, you have more ways to maybe manipulate the tempering or get the odds in your favor and do other things like that. One update that's going to be coming in Season 5, it won't be in the PTR, but we're targeting for launch, is that, we've got a lot of feedback that it feels so bad when, you get that like triple greater affix and it has the same number of rolls and then you brick it and then you have to try and go get another one. So in Season 5, to help with this, as your item gets better, basically, that you find, you're going to have more chances to temper it. So a much better chance to get the one that you want. Basically, the way it'll work is you're going to basically get 1 extra roll per greater affix that you have. So, you have 1 greater affix, 1 roll, 3 rolls.
And again, just to clarify, this is not in the PTR, but it will be in for the launch of Season 5 in itself. And again, just to reiterate, we are still looking at ways to help out that experience within tempering. As we've noted, we agree with players that it doesn't always feel great. And so you guys should expect to hear more updates to tempering after we get through Season 5 for sure.
Yeah.
All right. Next up, weapons.
Yeah, so I'll talk about this one a little bit. We took a look
at this chart.
Yeah, this chart. We took a look at inherent affixes on weapons, and we found that, a lot of inherent affixes like damage to distant or some other ones were a little too conditional and didn't get the update, in Season 4 that we wanted. So we went back and made them a little bit more generically useful and better across more builds. So we have a little chart here, but you can see kind of this is going to be the new inherent affixes on all the different weapon types. So we've made quite a few adjustments here. As an example, vulnerable damage is on bows. And dot damage is on axes, which I believe vulnerable on bows is new. But yeah, so we made quite a few updates. We basically just looked at the matrices of everything and kind of adjusted it to see what makes sense. So basically, you're just going to have, things that actually impact your builds much more often on the weapons that you want. And as another result of this update, we are also looking at what weapons classes can use. And we updated them a little bit to try and, let more classes use more weapons. We want players to be able to create interesting builds, play the way that we want, and so we want to open up these things as much as we can in our designs. So now druids are going to be able to use 2-hand polearms, 1-hand swords, and daggers. Sorceresses are going to be able to use 1-hand swords and maces. And necromancers are going to be able to use, I think it's maces and axes, actually.
Yeah, despite this necromancer pictured right here that is not using, it's using a 2-handed sword, but you can already use a 2-handed sword, but not using and the necromancer here, I know it's supposed to say all maces and axes as opposed to all swords, so.
But yeah, basically we're going to be opening up these classes to use more weapon types. And then also some of the uniques are going to be updated for the classes as well. So the Butcher's Cleaver can now be used for Necros, and Sorcerers can use Doombringer and Azure Wrath now.
Yeah, Sorcerers can use Azure Wrath, kind of like D2.
Yep, fits their theme very well too. So I think that'll be pretty cool.
Some additional quality of life updates. Now we're going to talk about some endgame bosses. As I have experienced, as Adam has experienced earlier, as he mentioned in the stream, we are making changes to the Beast in Ice. You guys will no longer have to make a sigil to summon the Beast in Ice, which is a huge quality of life update. The Beast will now live in a standard dungeon. The crawl to get to the Beast in Ice is much, much shorter now. It's going to be more similar to what we've seen with some of the other endgame bosses. And then at the same time, Eternal players that have maybe already built out some of these sigils, we made sure to keep you in mind so you can still use the sigils to fight the boss. You won't just you won't need summoning materials. You can just use the sigil right there in the boss room in itself. And this no longer requires sigil dust to actually summon the Beast in Ice. So some big changes to the Beast in Ice to help out that whole entire feel, especially when you're really target farming the Beast in Ice. Sometimes it was kind of brutal to have to go through the whole entire dungeon each and every time.
Yeah, so many times.
Yeah. So next we have Varshan. Varshan. The body parts are pretty much being reduced to one. I know it was eating up a lot of inventory space. It was kind of hard to manage at times and everything. So we're optimizing this, making this better. So now you'll just need one body part to essentially summon Varshan going forward, starting with Season 5. And one big thing that we're going to call out here before, and this is kind of like the cherry on top. Let's actually just play the clip and see if people actually notice it, and if not, then we'll call it out.
What could be different this time?
Poor Duriel.
Yeah, Mythic Unique maybe?
Oh.
No, that's not it.
Oh. Good gear though.
Yeah,
but something that is interesting here is the cauldron has reappeared.
You can just resummon him again.
There's the altar right there. You can now resummon all the endgame bosses without needing to run out of the dungeon.
Reset
the dungeon. So this will help a whole lot. Will make things way better in terms of like optimizing when you're for time and everything.
Yeah.
Especially when you're a party and you're like, everyone leave the dungeon so I can reset and stuff like that. Now you'll be able to do that immediately for all the endgame bosses, which is a huge feature I know that players have been asking for. So that will be also incorporated into Season 5. So lots and lots of changes for Season 5. One other thing I did want to call out regarding tempering, because just to clarify, because we've got some people going like, oh, I don't understand like the greater affix stuff, like in terms of additional rolls. If you have a 1-star greater affix, you'll get 1 additional roll. If you have like a 3-star or 4-star or something, you would get 3 or 4, pending the amount of stars that you actually specifically have on your item.
Yeah, I think it goes up to 3.
Yeah,
so
3. Sorry, yeah. 4 is more specific. 4 is uniques. Yeah. If I'm thinking about razor plate or something like that. But the other thing that I did want to call out is that this is actually going to be retroactive. So for players that still have maybe an item that they may have potentially bricked and it's sitting in their stash, just for like memento purposes or anything like that. Yeah, when your character does move to Eternal, if it was a greater affix, like a 3-star greater affix or something like that, you will end up getting those 3 additional rolls afterwards.
Yay, so we can brick it twice.
After these changes actually are implemented with the start of Season 5. It'll just be on your Eternal character, obviously, because your seasonal character will move to Eternal.
Brick it again!
Earpiece. That's like falling out. But one other thing I did want to call out as well for Season 5, we have some really big like accessibility options that are being added to the actual game, and we really need some testing on this in the Season 5 PTR. This is actually called out in our blog. We'd really love if players can actually check them out, test them out, provide feedback. I will note, we aren't planning, despite it being in the Season 5 PTR, we aren't planning on these features actually launching with Season 5. We really want to take the feedback, make them, better for when they are ready. And right now, I think the plan would be that they would be ready for Season 6. But it's important for us to be able to get that feedback. So we really need people to actually test out these specific features. We have like an auto pin feature, we have a compass feature, and then we have like a audio navigation assistance feature that is coming within some of these accessibility features for Season 5. So really important for people to kind of like jump in, check it out, give us feedback, and then you'll see those in Season 6 after the PTR is kind of over. But that is kind of like a huge wrap-up of all the stuff that is coming for the Season 5 PTR, and even a little bit more of even some of the stuff for Season 5 itself. We do want to take some questions, and we still have Dan on the line from the burning hells of Albany to answer any questions that we may have. But I know we have a question specifically teed up, so if you have questions, please ask them in Twitch chat, which is where we have live chat going on right now, and we will try to get through as many as possible.
Cool.
But first question I believe we have is, because I teed up this question, are there any new class buffs coming to Season 5? Specifically, if Adam can answer, Druid and Sorceress. Because I know, we hear you, everyone, about Druid and Sorceress. I know we talked a little bit about it here, but if you can like expand on it a little bit.
Yeah. Yes, there are new class buffs coming to Season 5, covered it a little bit. I think one they call out that people talk a lot about right now is, how Barbarians in particular are pretty strong, and then, the classes that can't get as far as they can in the pit, feels kind of bad. There's a lot to chew on there, but I think the short answer is yes, we hear you, and we're going to be looking to beef these things up. We do have some specific ways that we want to be targeting these things, and there's a lot of history to it. Barbarians in particular are tougher to balance. I think I've talked about this on stream a little bit before of, because of their arsenal system, they have more items. Anytime that we mess with, and we've messed with like the underlying systems of the game very heavily in the last year, right? Season 2, we updated all the combat math, which of course impacts items, which impacts character power. We've updated in Season 4 all of itemization, which obviously directly impacts the arsenal system very heavily. So when we do these large shakeups, it's a lot more difficult in a short amount of time to get everything exactly perfect of how the combinatorics of those effects are going to impact classes, right? So that's one end of it. Another end is what we're trying to do, and we started with this in Season 4. Is we're looking at the other class mechanics. And we want to kind of beef them up and give them the treatment that we kind of gave with the Necromancer in the Book of the Dead. In Season 4, we actually wanted to try this as an experiment. Like, hey, the Book of the Dead, the minions, the sacrifice bonuses, they're what really make Necromancer feel really cool and special and unique. So we're going to, try and catch that up, so to speak, to the arsenal system on the Barbarian. And not only just increase the numbers, right? Because just increasing the numbers is kind of easy. We even did that in the mid-season patch. If you look at the Druid boons, we increased them by 50%, doubled them in many cases. But we think to really help solve that on a fantasy and even just design perspective, we want to overhaul and really look at these mechanics and make them way better and more thematic to classes. So we don't have anything to announce today for Season 5, but that's something more long-term that we're doing to help that problem in the future. In the short term, we are, looking at, fixing the issues with these various classes, buffing them up in different ways, making different builds and other things viable and trying to keep that parity. We're also looking at, bringing down the outliers of power with the Barbarian in different ways to make sure that they have more parity with other classes as well.
Nerfs.
That's kind of our short and long-term vision of where we want this to be.
Awesome. I know we have a question specifically, and this is something I've seen a few times regarding Season 5 for Dan, because Infernal Hordes, people are seeing this gameplay and they're hearing about can I play this on Eternal and Seasonal? Can I play this? Is this like an ongoing thing going forward? What can players expect, Dan?
Sure, yeah. So with Season 5, we wanted to build out the end game. And because we're building out the end game, we wanted to make sure that any of the end game things we're putting in are on both Seasonal and Eternal. And so in this PTR, you'll be able to test out the Eternal version of Infernal Hordes. And so any of the rewards you get from it, all that's Eternal. So all players are going to benefit from it.
Awesome. Yeah, so all players will benefit from it, and as Dan mentioned, it's a new endgame feature, so it's like something that will be continuous beyond even Season 5 is what we're looking at. So yeah, players can expect to jump in Infernal Hordes going forward, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
And yeah, the feedback is going to be incredibly important during this PTR. As Dan mentioned beforehand, all the specific items that we're really hoping to get feedback on regarding how the boons feel, how the rewards feel, how the combat feels, and the waves and stuff like that will be really important for us during this specific moment. What is this is another Season 5 question, and hopefully you might be able to answer this, Dan. This from Lucky Luciano. Shout out, Diablo partner. What is the equivalent pit level of the 8th difficulty of the Infernal Hordes? Pit level, I guess, or Nightmare Dungeon, or Monster level.
Yeah, you're making me do math here.
Yeah, we just adjusted pit levels.
Yeah,
too, so
so
good luck.
tier 8 of the Infernal Hordes is going to be equivalent to about monster level. I think it's 180 to 200. So it goes up pretty high.
That's pretty late.
Okay, nice,
Yeah.
nice. So a difficult challenge for sure, which is good to hear. We have a question from Zapadas. Man, y'all need easier names, I swear. Do you foresee changes in grouping in the pit to allow group play to be more efficient? There will be changes. It won't be something present in PTR. We'll talk more about it at the Season 5 launch, but the team is very aware of it because we've heard about like, hey, it's kind of not great to feel like I'm getting only 50% of the rewards associated when I'm in a group within a pit if I'm not the party leader specifically. So it's something that the team's taking in, and we will have an update for players before Season 5, and it will be live, whatever change we have live in Season 5. So
That's good.
A question from, let's see. Well, this one's easy. Okay. Robot Jomo. What's the team's philosophy on rate of power gain? It seems that tempering, especially players, gain too much power too quickly, really removing the tension from the leveling up experience. Any chance to add more friction to tempering, materials, costs, etc.?
Yeah. We have seen a little bit of this and heard this feedback ourselves. It's kind of going in two different ways here. So the leveling experience, then how tempering messes with it, right? The leveling experience, as people probably have seen, has been sped up quite a bit, right? We do want people to be able to kind of level quickly and get to the fun of the game as quickly as possible. So we do want them, we don't want there to be a ton of friction. Like, when we first launched the game, we had the idea that, like, getting to level 100 alone was a big accomplishment, right? And we've learned that, players really want to, like, fulfill their power fantasies, get to the part where they're actually, like, incrementally increasing their character's power and finding things to use that power against. And so they enjoy that end game a lot, and we want to get them there in a reasonable amount of time. So that's the part that is like, hey, it's fine, level quicker, it's good, right? But then the other part is, like, tempering and kind of the tuning of the affixes. We have heard the feedback and kind of agree with it that, the early tempering recipes are really, really strong. Right? That was by design when we launched Season 4. One of the big kind of mandates to the team that we felt was important was we wanted, before Season 4, we constantly got the feedback and knew it was true that, your item stats weren't interesting enough and didn't matter enough and weren't very impactful and just didn't feel good, right? And so we very much like juiced them up to be very strong, and then this new tempering system that manipulates them, we made it very strong so that out the gate, our goal was that when you temper an item, you can really feel the damage. It wasn't like this incremental, oh, my damage goes up in like 10 different places here and there, and now I'm strong. It was like, no, this one thing happened, and you felt it, and it was good. And so we're going to, try and walk that line. We're going to probably go a little more in between here where, we do agree that the tempering is warping the early game experience too much to the point that it's like you pick up an item and you don't care about the stats because you just temper something on and it's like way better. Right? So we don't want that, but we do still want them to feel and be really impactful. So we have heard the feedback. I don't think we have huge adjustments in Season 5 right away, but we are going to be looking at that leveling process and streamlining that quite a bit. We're having time actually in talks about that right now with various members of the team. So it will be looked at. Not tons will change in Season 5, though.
Awesome. Question from Razzle Dazzle Daris. Razzle Dazzle Daris. It's a long name to log in on. Did you say we can temper uniques? Are you open to letting us imprint affixes? I had this thought we can imprint a unique, but only once.
Yeah, going back, that was kind of what I talked about with the unique section. We right now know. I'm not going to say never in the future. It's definitely the obvious thing that we could do, like just add tempering to uniques, of course. But we want them to have an identity that is very different from legendaries. One of the concerns with that is that the more that you give uniques manipulation, the more that they just turn into legendaries with a different item color when they drop on the ground, right? Like they're actually not different in how they work. If we were able to manipulate stats, add stats, all those things. So we do want them to have a different identity in the game. So we're not doing it now, but in the future, we've talked about it. We're open to the idea, but we do want to try this first of like, double down, what makes a unique, and that you build around it. Except there's a little bit of friction. rather than just turning it into the item that you want every time.
Question from Barrick is, hey Adam, or Adams, I have a question for the Q&A. How is the dev team feeling about the reception of Season 4? Is that making them rethink any plans for future seasons? I mean, I think one thing that we can most definitely call out here is, like, obviously Season 4 has been really great. Like, we've been hearing a lot of great feedback from players, and, you know, we're very well aware of, like, you know, how everyone's been enjoying it. I think one huge thing that's helped with that as well was, like, the idea that we had a PTR for Season 4, and now we're seeing that again for Season 5. So, like, we know, like, having that moment where players can actually jump in, provide feedback, give us some notes on specific things is really beneficial, especially when we have, like, new huge features like what we did for Season 4, which was, you know, obviously tempering, masterworking, the pit, all new HellTides. There was a ton of new features, and then of course with Season 5, you know, players are now going to be able to run through Infernal Horde, tons of new gear, and legendary aspects for them. So it's just like a ton of stuff that we know that we can most definitely take feedback on. And having those moments has really helped us with some of those decisions.
Yeah, I would say on the design team side, I know, like, the people on the team are very happy with how Season 4 went. It couldn't have gone better, really, in our eyes. PTR was a huge deal, helped us a lot, especially on the balance and design side to, you know, get things into a better place. Another thing I may call out with Season 4 is that, I think how to phrase it, like, you know, there's been a lot of disruption to the game, right? And so when there's that much disruption of, like, you know, we update all the core math and all the items and everything, you know, it's very difficult to get things into a fine-tuned state, right? And, you know, without giving anything away, we have big updates coming in the future with, you know, expansion and other things. But one of the things that we're looking forward to, I think, as a team is when we've kind of settled down a little bit on the big disruptions, like overhauling, you know, all of itemization and things like that. Because, you know, it becomes a lot more difficult to fine-tune things like balance, or even on the design side, like designs and making sure that they work and that we're, like, iterating and upgrading things versus, you know, changing things around in huge ways. So while we think it was really successful and we're happy with how Itemization 2.0 turned out, the team is looking forward to, like, making the things as they are and make them work better and more do fine-tuning work. And so I think you can expect in the future as a player, you know, after we've done some more disruption and made the game, like, in a really good place, we're very happy with it, which we're really close to now, I think. That you have tighter class balance, tighter designs, tighter roles for things, and just, you know, one of the things that excites me and excited the team about Season 4 was, like, the tons of quality of life improvements and how much of an impact that makes on players, which I think we knew, but it hit home in Season 4, right? Like, just the Codex of Power, how that changed and how that completely fixed, you know, the hoarding of items and things like that, I think are what really jazz us a lot, because it just makes that flow experience better, like the boss ladder, you know, being able to reset bosses, stuff like that, I think is actually really impactful and good for the longevity of the game. So we're excited to do more things like that.
All right. Last question that we have here is well, it's just Satan's.
Oh,
Satan's with a Z and 666 afterwards. Very good theme.
Diablo.
Yeah,
Perfect.
very Diablo theme. Is specifically asking, what is the seasonal theme? Or are we, like, holding back any information right now regarding that and stuff? Dan, I don't know if you want to clarify here, or if you want me to, you can.
All right. So we haven't announced the name for the season yet, as far as I know, but the seasonal theme seems, I guess, fairly obvious. You know, we're going back to hell, and so the theme is pretty much returning to hell. And while the Infernal Horde is just one part of that, the rewards are another part. And when we have our Season 5 live stream, we'll go into all of the rest of the things that we have planned for Season 5.
Exactly. Yeah, we have some additional stuff to talk about when we do actually have our Season 5 live stream. We're just right now, the biggest focus for this stream is for people to hear about the content that they're going to be able to play in PTR, and we want people to really hone in and focus in on that, so we can actually get that feedback for the team here, and we can make any changes that we may need to.
Yeah.
So. But yeah, that is kind of going to wrap us up for today for Q&A. I'm gonna lightning round like a few quick things because
Sure.
I'm sure chat will kill me if I don't call it out.
Sure.
I know we're getting a lot of questions about loadouts. It is again still something that we are very well aware of, and we still plan on. It just takes a lot of time. It's a huge amount of overhaul changes and everything from that end. Separately, we this has been coming up a lot. Auction house. There are currently no plans right now for something like that, but we hear you guys. We feedback, things like that. Let us know. But right now, those are the two big things that I've been seeing a ton in chat. I just want to address them before people go like, "You're not reading chat. What, you're in some like alternate universe chat or something like that." But PTR again, just to remind everyone, starts next Tuesday. It runs for 1 week. It's on PC Battle.net only. Please provide feedback on our forums, Reddit, social media, our community Discord, things like that. We're always looking around. We really value the feedback that we get during these PTR processes. And of course, at the same time, patch notes on the blog are live immediately after this stream. So check out Diablo4.com when those do get up. Next time you guys see us, next time we stream, is July 18th. It's the Spirit-Born reveal.
Ooh, that's exciting.
Everyone gets to check out the Spirit-Born. So we'll be back live on stream on July 18th. We'll be revealing the brand new class coming to Diablo 4. That will be part of Vessel of Hatred. So we're really excited about that. And I think that wraps it up. I want to give a huge shout out to Dan in Albany.
Yeah, thank
Stay
you,
cool,
Dan. Yeah.
Enjoy the
Stay
AC.
cool.
The
The burning fire under him.
Yeah, I
is all
know,
see.
exactly. And thank you again, Adam Jackson. And from everyone on the Diablo 4 team, we wish you a wonderful weekend, and we'll see you in PTR next week.
Thank you, everybody.
See you guys.
Wish you a Merry Christmas. We wish you a Merry Christmas. I don't know why that got stuck in my head as soon as he said that. He's like, and we wish you, and I'm like, a Merry Christmas. All right, so we got PTR patch notes coming up soon, so we'll take a look at those. I'm not sure when they're actually going to go live on the blog, but I do have the blog open, and I am spamming the refresh button. So I hopefully will see them as soon as they pop up. We can do a quick recap real quick and talk about some of this stuff for those of you who missed it or didn't start from the beginning. So he said Season 5 PTR starts next Tuesday, but next Tuesday would not be the 25th. I think Adam's having a stroke. Next Tuesday would be the 2nd. It's this upcoming Tuesday, which is the 25th. He did state it was the 25th. So there's that. The character boosts are going to work in the season PTR. So before the codex would reset, they did confirm that they have fixed that glitch. So the codex will no longer reset. They're also going to have a character copy feature, which apparently has already been activated. So for those of you who are interested in doing a PTR, they are going to copy over your characters. In fact, they already did. They did it yesterday. So whatever your character was set up with yesterday before the character copy went live, that is what you're probably going to have on the PTR as far as testing purposes. Apparently Season 5 is going to be focused on Endgame. That's what they said. They're going to be introducing the Infernal Hordes, which are wave-based gameplay with survivor choices. Kind of sounds like some of those Call of Duty games where it was like the Call of Duty Zombies where you had to like kill the zombies in waves, and then you had to go like buy weapons and like make choices and what you wanted to do in between each wave. And then, like it kind of sounded like that. They did confirm that the Infernal Hordes were going to be between level 180 and 200 monster level at the highest level. There's going to be 8 tiers. So starting at tier 1, I'm not sure what level tier 1 is, but tier 8 is going to be, looks like equivalent to some of the highest areas in the game. There's going to be like abyssal scrolls and various items that you use to summon the Infernal Horde levels. There's also going to be a special currency that you can only spend inside the Infernal Hordes. And basically, when you complete a wave, you have to pick a boon or a bane, which is basically something that's going to help you and something that's going to hurt you at the same time. And there's like a couple different choices. It was kind of neat to see. I'm not really sure how much it's actually going to have an effect on things, but they also talked about the Travancore Council bosses coming back. So in the Infernal Horde, all the Trav bosses are coming back, like Mayfor Dragon Hand, Vile Hand, Ice Fist, and so forth and so on. They're bringing them back from the dead, basically, because, well, you're in hell, so, that's where they got sent. They said there was going to be, they said there was going to be 50 plus new unique items added. I only got a look at some of them for those of you who are interested. They did show a couple of the uniques. I can do a quick show off of some of these. They did the Basilisk. They showed off the Third Blade. They showed off the Morticrux, the Umbra Crux, the Vox Ominum. Of course, you can pause the stream at any time and take a look at these. And Rakanoth's Wake. And then they also showed off this one, which is really neat for the Chain Lightning, which is Axial Conduit. So all of these are new uniques, and these are just only some of the new uniques that they're putting into the game. I'm a little worried at the number of weapon uniques that they have here, especially considering with how powerful weapon tempers are, but I guess we'll have to see what they have planned. Target farming Uber uniques and uniques from Obel chests, Obel vendors, HellTide chests, and Whisper caches apparently a thing now. So that's going to be something. Unique item updates. They basically said that Season 5 PTR was only going to be the new uniques were going to get updated. So if you hop into PTR and you see the old uniques and they don't have any updates to them, don't fret, because they did say that all uniques will be updated by the time that Season 5 starts. But the Season 5 PTR is only going to include the changes to the new uniques, not the changes to the old uniques. They were talking very specifically about making the uniques less generically good, which is kind of odd. So they're going to be more specific. Increasing the power of the uniques to catch up with legendary items. They talked about that, upgrading the stat affixes and making them more powerful in their respective choices. They're trying to make them compete with legendary items, basically. They also talked about basically making the two-handed uniques have the bonus projectiles on them, because obviously if you have a two-handed unique, it takes up both slots unless you're barbarian, because you little barbarian bastards have so many weapons. But if you're not a barbarian or a rogue, you know, and you put on a two-handed unique, you basically lost access to any of the weapon tempers. So it looks like they're trying to fix that a little bit to give you access to the weapon tempers with the two-handed uniques, because they understand the weapon tempers are really powerful. The stat for the theme of the unique better. They talked about that, which is basically where they're going to make the specific stat for that unique better than it was previously. They want it to stand out, essentially. Like if a weapon gives you, you know, like a really long nose, they want it to give you a Pinocchio-esque nose. Like, they don't want it to just be like a mediocre-sized nose. They want it to be the longest nose in the history of noses. And, you know, I guess, you know, as long as they stand out in their respective category, you know, they might actually be useful. Uber changes, they changed Uber uniques to mythics, and they made them purple. Not really I mean, it doesn't matter at all, okay? It doesn't matter, like just, it's totally a cosmetic change, but I hate it. Like, I don't like it at all. I hate it. But because mythic is a WoW term and purple is the WoW color. I like the colors that we had in Diablo 2. Like, I don't know why we're taking colors from other games and shoving them into Diablo 2, but for the Horde, apparently. They talked about specifically nerfing Flame Shield. So invulnerability skills now start their cooldown when the invulnerability ends, not when it begins. I said LOL, nerf Fire Shield. Of course, it's Flame Shield, not Fire Shield. Basically, this is to prevent infinite vulnerability. They said this. Like, they literally said this. They said, we're making it so that infinite invulnerability doesn't happen, and we want to make sure that infinite invulnerability doesn't happen. Will they actually succeed? I don't know. Like, a lot of the times, believe it or not, they don't succeed. And, like, then the whole community laughs. But maybe this one might actually stick. So all the sorceresses using infinite fire shield vulnerability, guess what? Yeah, you're going to have to find another way to stay alive. They talked about reducing CC on monsters again. They also said that they're going to be allowing us to use potions while crowd controlled, which is interesting. They're moving companion aspects to the companions, which is a good change, so that the companions actually have their buffs. There's way too many companion aspects as it is, so hopefully the changes will enable easier builds with the companions. And then on top of that, they kind of separated out like the stuff that required the companions to be a non-companion build and was a little odd. The Golem got a Hulk smash. He now like jumps to the target and smashes the ground, which is pretty neat. They talked about quality of life updates, which is whispers are easier to complete in HellTide. Basically, some of the whispers were like having you leave the HellTide to complete the whisper, which they didn't want. And they were also going to make them easier to make sure that you got like a full whisper cache. They're also lowering the drop rate on Baneful Hearts, which, I mean, doesn't really matter. I think I had like 300 of them at one point, and I kept spamming them, and I couldn't get rid of them. So maybe it's a good thing that they're slightly going to be a lower drop rate. Tempering, they talked about after Season 5 fixes. I'm going to be honest with you, when they went over the tempering section, it felt really vague, and like I didn't understand what the hell they were trying to get across. They talked about it for a little while, and I swear it just kind of felt like they weren't really making any changes. We believe it's important that items have an endpoint so the players aren't hoarding tons of them forever, which was funny because they were like, and we succeeded in making it so that people don't hoard items. And I laughed because literally I've been hoarding more items since the temper system because I need like an additional 4 or 5 items just in case I brick like the 4 or 5 before that. So like I literally will go through like 5 or 6 swords, like just bricking items like one after the other, trying to get something that's useful. And so I've actually started hoarding more items now because I need more items to brick. Like I need more items to destroy and throw away. And so now my whole stash is just overflowing with legendaries. And they said currently the RNG is completely out of the player's hands, which doesn't feel great. And I don't think most people are really complaining about this. More so we're just complaining that we roll the same thing 5 times in a row or 6 times in a row. Like we roll literally crowd control damage 6 times in a row when what we need is close damage. And they said they're looking for more ways to control RNG in the future. The one change that they did say that was coming for Season 5, because most of the stuff is not coming for Season 5, they said that all greater affixes are going to have an additional role, which they did talk about. So basically we're going to get 1 additional role per greater affix up to a maximum of 3. So if you have a 3 greater affix item, you're going to get 3 extra rolls because it's a 3 greater affix item, which will hopefully make it less likely that you brick the items. They also rather jokingly said that if you actually kept your 3 greater affix item and during the the next season patch, you'll be able to re-roll it those additional 3 times. So it'll gain 3 additional rolls upon the patching if you want to brick it a second time. Inherent affixes updated to be more useful. They talked about like the trying to remember here. So they kind of like talked about how the tempering system was overshadowing the inherent affixes on the items. So they were talking about trying to make the inherent affixes more useful, and they talked about that in, like with the leveling system too. More items usable for classes. Druids are now going to be able to use 2-handed poles. Yep, that's right. They're going to be strippers. And they're also going to be able to use 1-handed swords and daggers. Necros are going to be able to use swords and axes. And sorceresses are going to be able to use 1-handed swords and maces. The Necro is also going to get access to the Butcher's Cleaver. The Sorceress is going to get access to the Doombringer and Azure Wrath. And some interesting changes there for like what they can actually use. Beast in the Ice is going to be turned into a boss arena. They basically said it's going to be a boss arena kind of a thing. They kind of shortened the distance between the beginning and the boss, and now he's going to be sitting in there. You no longer need to use sigil dust or anything to create him. So it's going to be a change across the board to make the Beast in the Ice more compatible like the other bosses. They also talked about how you can now resummon bosses without having to leave the dungeon, which is a really amazing change. So now you no longer have to summon the boss, kill the boss, leave the dungeon, reset the dungeon, re-enter the dungeon, everybody gather back at the counter, resummon the boss, kill the boss. Like now it's no longer going to be that. It's literally going to be summon the boss, kill the boss, summon the boss, kill the boss, summon the boss, kill the boss. Take a break to go sell loot, summon the boss, kill the boss, summon the boss, kill the boss, etc. Patch notes after the campfire, so we're going to be taking a look at those. They did talk about the Season 5 theme, which is basically going to be going back to Hell and the Infernal Hell like game mode. They didn't have a name for it yet, so I guess we'll see. Let's see if the patch notes are live now so we can go over those. Boop. Patch notes. My little patch notes. Doodle-doo-doo-doo. Lovely little patch notes. Doodle doot doot. I love you. Boodle doodle doot 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 doot. Let's check his page on Twitter. A lot of the times he'll post the link to them on Twitter. It's easier to get them that way than it is to wait for the page to update. There we go. Okay. So we got patch notes. All right, get some popcorn and cuddle up, boys, because we got patch notes. There's the link if you guys need it. I'm going to get myself nice and comfortable. It's going to be a long patch notes. Whoa. All right. Let's bring this big. No, not that one. This one. Make it real big so you guys can see it. New Eternal Realm questline, The Eyes of the Enemy. Season 5 features a new story where enemies are cut down, alliances shift, unlikely friends emerge from the shadows. The PTR features a new questline that takes place after the events of the main questline and is available on both Seasonal and Eternal Realms and will remain on the Eternal Realm once Season 5 has concluded. Apparently it starts in Hawazar in World Tier 3. Investigate a disturbance amongst the city folk. They're completing the questline will allow you to battle the Infernal Hordes. The new gameplay activity coming with Season 5. Note that you only have to complete this quest once across your entire account. Slay the Infernal Hordes. HellTides were only the beginning of the Hordes lying in wait. Confront seemingly endless waves of Hell's legions in the realm of hatred as the Infernal Hordes grow more powerful with each passing day. The Infernal Hordes activity is where you slay hordes while burning Aether to unlock powerful weapons and rewards. Successfully slay the Hordes and you'll be able to fight the powerful Fell Council. Enter the realm of hatred by using the Infernal Compass. Hell compasses can be found by defeating endgame bosses, HellTides, Nightmare Dungeons, and Whispers. A Hell Compass will be granted to you upon completing the new Eternal Quest. They talked about how you can basically get a guaranteed greater affix from this, so it should be an interesting way to farm greater affix items. This is one of the choices here. So there was 3 buttholes. You get to choose between the 3 buttholes. You get the gaping butthole, the medium butthole, and the tight butthole. And you got to choose between them. And there's boons and bonuses for each butthole. Infernal Hordes has time-limited waves lasting 90 seconds each. Collect burning Aether during a wave to spend at the end of a successful Infernal run. At the end of 90 seconds, kill the remaining enemies and decide between 3 Infernal Offers. Once selected, the next wave will begin, successfully slaying all waves in the tier you attempted to advance of the Well of Hatred, then the Fell Council. Upon defeating the Fell Council, spending your burning Aether on the Spoils of Hell. So the Fell Council is going to give you your is going to give you your loot at the end. As you can see here, here's a choice between all the buttholes. We got the Gorging Masses butthole, the Exalted Masses butthole, and I can't read that one. The Hellfire butthole. Upon defeating each wave, Hell will tempt you with an Infernal Offer. The Infernal Offer gives you a choice of 3 different boons and banes that modify your run. Example, elite damage increased. Elites grant increased burning Aether. Choose wisely. Infernal Offers will stack across the duration of your Infernal Hordes run. Many can be active at the same time. Infernal Offers are your chance to increase the difficulty in order to earn more burning Aether, or select a more modest Infernal Offer if the intensity is too great. Burning Aether. Earning birthing Aether by slaying Aether Fiends and Aether Lords or by destroying Soul Spires and Etheric Masses. Burning Aether is earned individually, regardless of playing solo or in group. This lets you decide on how to spend it at the end of your run. On a successful run, you'll use Burning Aether to unlock Spoils of Hell. There will be 4 different Spoils of Hell available on completing your Infernal Hordes run. Spoils of Equipment, Spoils of Materials, Spoils of Gold, which he said is literally all gold. Spoils of Greater Equipment, which is going to guarantee you 1 item with a greater affix, which is neat. This is the Infernal Hordes compass here, apparently. There are 8 tiers of Infernal Compasses, which scale in difficulty in World Tier. Each Infernal Compass tier increases the number of waves starting at 5 for tiers 1 through 3, increasing until a maximum of 10 waves with a tier of 8 Infernal Compass. It also increases the starting difficulty of monsters and increases the potency of your rewards while decreasing your number of revives. Abyssal Scrolls can be earned and used to upgrade your Infernal Compass by upgrading their tier. Infernal Compasses will only drop at tiers 1 through 3. Abyssal Scrolls will need to be increased their level to a maximum of tier 8. Does it show the number of revives? Yeah, so 3 revives remaining right there. Infernal Compasses can be used at the following levels and world tiers. Tier 1 can be made at world tier 3. Tier 2 is available at world tier 4, including bonus affixes, which will increase crafting materials and legendary unique drop rates. Tier 3, available at level 100, includes bonus affixes and includes the spoils of greater equipment. So you can't get access to the greater affixes until you get access to Tier 3, and you can't get access to Tier 3 until you are level 100. Interesting. Battlefell Priests. If you manage to survive the infernal hordes of the Fell Council await, originally meant to protect us from the primeval Mephisto during the events of Diablo 2, these noble priests were corrupted and became champions of the very demon they swore to oppose. There are 5 Fell Council members in total, each equipped with different unique abilities. Every time you face the Fell Council, there will be 3 different members to fight. Each 3 will be selected to fight you at random. Be wary of their unique abilities in the various combinations you encounter them. Once you inflict enough damage on the Fell Council, the priests will become more frenzied and their attacks stay on guard if you wish to live. Upon defeating the Fell Council, you can spend your Burning Aether on the spoils of hell. So the Fell Council is probably comprised of the main 5 that I would imagine. The main 5 are ice, fire, poison. I think there's a lightning one, and there's one that's basically just physical damage. And you can kind of tell that if you look at this picture. You can see one has a firearm. That would be Dragon Fist or whatever, or Flame Fist. There's Ice Hand. The council members are very specific. Council... Let me pull this up real quick just for fun. So the council members are... right here. So we've got Torque Ice Fist, which is obviously cold enchanted. Geleb Flamefinger, which is fire enchanted. So we're going to have a fire and a cold version. There's also Vile Hand, which is the one that's poison, and he's also cursed, and that would be the poison one. And then Mayfer Dragon Hand, which I did see Mayfer in the list when they were showing things off, is basically pure physical, and Brem Spark Fist is lightning. So my thinking is they probably just pulled Brem for the lightning, Mayfer for the physical damage, Torque Ice Fist for the cold, and Geleb Flameburger for the fire, and then they pulled in Ishmael Vile Hand for the poison. I always joke at these guys because everybody's always like, "What's your name? I'm Flamefinger. What's your name? I'm Ice Fist. What's your name? I'm Spark Fist. Well, I'm Vile Hand. I never wipe with toilet paper. This is my wiping hand. If I touch you with it, you die." Yeah, that's kind of gross, man. Your hand is just disgusting. That's your power. It touches somebody and they immediately die, and they're like, okay, wow, never touch me with that hand ever. Don't ever touch me with that hand, sir. You keep that hand to yourself. Can we get this man like a wax bag to put over his hand? I mean, it's really powerful when the enemies come, but we don't want to be near that. We don't we do not want to be near that. New weapons and items. The forges in the burning hells burn the fiercest, leading to incredible possibilities for weapons they produce. Season 5 introduced new legendaries, new unique items, and new items in general. These new legendaries and uniques can be earned by slaying enemies across Sanctuary, blah, 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 blah. Quality of life updates to endgame bosses and more. You no longer need to reset the dungeon to replay the same boss. Upon killing them, to summoning the altar reappears and allows you to use more resources to play them again. Summoning Varshan now only requires malignant hearts, trembling hands, and blackened femurs, and gurgling heads. Trembling hands, blackened femurs, and gurgling heads have been removed from the game. Oh man, I can't make another gurgling head joke. The gurgling head jokes are the best. Endgame bosses now drop additional gold instead of rare items. Interesting. Beast in the Ice. Beast in the Ice is the one that I talked about earlier. So they're no longer going to be a dungeon. It's going to be a standard boss now. You can use your leftover ice sigils to summon him if you want to, but they're not going to be able to be created anymore. The boss fight is now much closer to the entrance, so you no longer need to progress through the dungeon. and Sigil Dust has been removed as a material cost to summon him. So basically, he's just going to be converted into a regular boss now. HellTides and Whispers, we've significantly reduced the time it takes to complete Whisper bounties. We've now made it so that there are always enough Whispers to earn 10 Grim Favors within a given HellTide. It should now take significantly less time to complete. Additionally, icons have been updated to be consistent with other Whispers. Increasing your threat now consistently scales with the health of slain monsters. Interesting. So the more health the monster has, the faster your threat goes up. That's nice. We're adjusting Baneful Heart drop rates as they were dropping too frequently to feel valuable. Chance to get one from Tortured Gift start from at 13% and increase each time you fail to get one. Once you are rewarded with a Baneful Heart, the chance resets to 10%. So wait a minute. So if it scales based on the health of the monster slain, if I go in and like one pop the Maiden, like on my, you know, high level character, is that just gonna like instantly scale my threat level to maximum if I just one pop the Maiden? Because she's got a lot of health. Or what about Kixarth? Like Kixarth is running around all over the place. What if I just one pop Kixarth? Am I just gonna get like instant threat meter as soon as I one pop some of these bosses? Hellborn and HellTide Assassins now start at a 1% chance to drop a heart and also increase each time you fail to get one. It now resets at 2%. The Cull Demon Whisper Bounty now includes Fallen Cull Whisper Bounty and will replace the Cull Cultish. Loot rewards. Resplendent Sparks awards for defeating tormented bosses can now be earned separately on both hardcore and non-hardcore. Resplendent Sparks and Scattered Prisms will no longer be automatically picked up. Additionally, these items can now be found in the Lost Item Stash if forgotten when they drop. Unique and mythic items can now be acquired through Whisper Caches, the Purveyor of Curiosity, and Tortured Gifts in HellTide. The chance to find Mythic Uniques through all non-boss drop locations has been increased. Treasure Goblins. The loot quality from Treasure Goblins has been improved. They can now drop 1 to 3 legendary items and 2 to 6 rare items. The higher the number of legendary drops, the lower the number of rare item drops. The opposite is also true, e.g. if 2 legendary item drops, then 4 rares will drop in addition. Now drop 1 to 2 elixirs and are guaranteed to additionally drop common ore, herbs, leather, and gem fragments. Ooh, gem fragments. Gem fragments are rare this season. Anybody who's been playing this season, you know, I need me some rubies. I need me some topazes. Okay, I need royal rubies and royal topazes. Give me all. Increase the amount of gold that drops. Examples, level 1, tier 1, 40k, level 100, 150k gold. They could bring that up to 1 million, still wouldn't be enough, I feel like. In World Tiers 3 and 4, Treasure Goblins also drop Forgotten Souls. Additionally, they now have a 10, 20, 30% chance to drop 1 to 2 Scattered Prisms in World Tiers 1, 2, 3, and 4, respectively. So this is an update they changed for weapons. So we're now allowing more classes to use different weapon types, and this includes updating innate affixes to be more useful across classes and adjusting their conditional requirements. For instance, sorcerers will now be able to use one-handed swords and maces. So basically, they changed some of this stuff, like the axes are now going to have damage over time. The maces are going to be overpower. The swords are crits. The wands are going to be vulnerable. Minion damage is going to be on the scythe, which makes sense for the necromancer. Staff is going to be damage over time now. Bow is going to be crit damage. X-bow is going to be vulnerable. Dagger is going to be close still. Polearm got changed to vulnerable. Offhand is lucky hit, and shield is still blocking thorns. So basically, they're trying to make, like, they took away some of the stupid stats that nobody used. Like, I mean, basically, is what happened. Like, the polearm, I think it had something stupid on it that nobody ever wanted to use. And so because it was a polearm, nobody wanted to use the stupid polearm. And now you might actually want to use the polearm because it's got vulnerable damage on it, right? Now you might actually want to use, you know, like the axe and the mace because they have specific things on them. I do feel like they took the axes with the dot damage and they may have inadvertently taken it so that nobody wants to use the axes either, except for the people who are using dot damage builds. But if I'm a bleed damage build, I might be looking at the axe with a you know, an interesting eye at this point. Future accessibility items. In Season 5 PTR, we have 3 large quality of life accessibility features we're looking for feedback on. These features are designed to allow players to easily navigate the world and find destinations of their quests. They are working in progress features, so every piece of feedback helps us make adjustments prior to the official release in the later update. Provides audio pings that help navigate players toward their current map pin in the world. In conjunction with auto pin, this allows players to constantly navigate toward their current quest. This new feature that automatically drops a map pin on the destination of your selected quest or task from your in-game journal. When a pin is dropped, your mini-map shows a route to follow to get to the chosen destination. This becomes the default when selecting quests and further enables additional navigation features. Audio navigation assistant. When this feature enabled, the player receives a spatial audio ping that directs the player toward their placed pin on the overworld map. This feature, in conjunction with auto pin navigation, allows players to navigate through the quest content while having their destination tracked through audio navigation. For best results, we recommend using headphones for the immersive sound. Players can adjust both the volume and the interval of the ping to find the level that meets their needs. Compass. The compass feature enables an on-screen HUD element that circles around the player and points toward their place in-world pin. In combination with auto pin, this provides consistent guidance to the player. Players can change the color of the arrow to match their particular needs to ensure that it is visible while slaughtering the denizens of hell. I mean, it sounds like good changes for those who are disabled, but it also sounds like super duper easy questing where you can like mindlessly and brain-numbingly just like follow what the computer says. I've played some games like this. There's one of them specifically that I shall not name because I don't even want to give it any attention. But basically, like it was completely brain dead. Like you did nothing. Like it had a footsteps to your path. You could even hit a button and your character would auto run on the path to the destination. Like you basically had to do nothing. You would just like press a button to auto run to the destination. You could cross your arms and just wait for your character to get there. And I mean, I understand that it's important for the disabled community to have options, but I also, you know, like I see it also as a straight up just take me to the quest thing. Features offered for testing. We will have the servers up. North America, Europe, and Korea, Japan, South America, and Australia. Characters on your account have been copied ahead of time to prepare for PTR. Although some of their items may be out of date compared to how they are currently set up in-game, once you log in through Battle.net, your account will carry over the following account-based progress. Campaign completion, mounts and skill up points, Fog of War, and Alter Lilith stat bonuses. As so many of these changes apply to endgame, the following features will be offered. Instantly boost your character to level 100 upon entering PTR and arriving in Zarmazet. There will be an NPC named PTR Boost that will have a dialogue option which boosts me to level 100. Upon boosting, you will receive all the new legendary items, one unique item for each class, 100 million gold, 1,000 obols, 2 random sets of ancestral gear at 9 power 920. I don't know why they do that. Why not just do 925? I guess to like make us go get better gear. Upgraded potions, fully unlocked Paragon glyphs, up to 10 tempering manuals, class specific, based on base amount of all consumable materials. It does not include materials for resources specifically earned for masterworking, scatter prisms, and resplendent sparks. Materials to enter the pit and nightmare dungeons are granted. Completed class system mechanics, enchantments for sorceresses, etc. This boost can be repeated with new characters on PTR, and you can trade between characters as needed. Fog of War will be completely cleared. Please note some things will be missing intentionally so that we can test the flows of what we want to watch. Let's see here. How to install PTR. If you guys have never installed PTR, let me go over this with you real quick so that you guys know. So basically, you're just going to boot up your interface here. You're going to click on Diablo 4. And then what you're going to do is, and it's really simple. All right, pay attention, guys. You just click on this little arrow right here. You see this little arrow? Click on that arrow, and it's going to say Public Test Realm right here. And you're going to select Public Test Realm, and that's literally the gist of it. And usually you'll have to install it just like you would the base game. It's not going to just be an update, and it doesn't use the base game's files. Usually it has like an entire separate installation, so you are going to need some space. And then when you hit play, you're going to boot up the Public Test Realm instead of the base game. And to switch back, you literally just click on that same arrow, select back on the live version of the game, and that brings you back to the live version. I don't believe this is going to be accessible for console, so I don't think they usually don't do the PTR for consoles. And here we go. We got the patch notes, boys. Version 1.50 PTR build. New items and tempering recipes. Worldly Finesse Offense. This is a tempering recipe. Plus critical strike damage, vulnerable, overpower, and ultimates. Okay. So this is something that was missing. Apparently a lot of people were talking about this, and you could go to other characters and you could steal this from another character, but it wasn't accessible to all characters. So this allows it to be accessible to all characters now. Barbarian, unique items, Unbroken Chain Amulet. Casting Steel Grasp reduces Iron Maelstrom's cooldown by 5 to 10 seconds. Enemies damaged by Iron Maelstrom deal 15 to 30% less damage for 6 seconds. Wow. A 30% physical damage reduction? That kind of turns this into Bone Storm. Kind of turns into Bone Storm. I don't know. Barb can have 3x swords. That means 3x critical strike damage. Yeah, definitely. That's one of the things, that's one of the main benefits that the Barbarian has over a lot of classes is the multiple weapons. So yes, they can roll critical strike damage on their two-handed mace, both their swords, and also on their freaking their two-handed sword. So they can literally have ridiculous amounts of critical strike damage. I mean, it's something that the developers are aware of. They made the Barbarian with 4 weapons, and they know that the Barbarian having 4 weapons is going to give them ridiculous amounts of bonuses. I mean, the only thing close is the Rogue, and the Rogue has 3 weapons. All the other classes with their meager 2 weapons, or potentially even just 1 weapon, are, you know, like pathetic by comparison. It's kind of sad, you know, because when you play like a druid or something like that, and you got to use a staff, and you get like 1 temper on 1 item, and then you look over at the Barbarian, and he's got, not only does he have 4 tempers, but he has 2 two-handed tempers and 2 one-handed tempers, which means he technically has, what is that, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So he technically has 6 one-handed tempers to your 2 one-handed tempers, which is insane. And yes, the Barbarian just gets the best of all the worlds here. Unbroken Chain Amulet is definitely looking interesting. It's interesting. I'm not really sure how good it's going to be, but it basically turns Iron Maelstrom into like a Bone Storm level of damage reduction, which is certainly not terrible, and also reduces the cooldown, which makes it easier to use. The fact that it sucks up the amulet slot, though, might make it not really as great. We'll have to see. The amulet slot is one of your more important slots that you can use for aspects and unique items and all sorts of other stuff. You know, like having access to, say, like Banished Lord's Talisman, or, you know, your like Melted Heart of Saleg or something like that, which is going to be an issue. Aspect of forward momentum mobility, knocking back an enemy grants 25 to 40% movement speed for 3 seconds. Okay. You could get that easily with kick. Tempering recipes, Slayer Finesse Offensive, vulnerable damage, bonus damage against injured and bleeding damage. Okay, so they're adding more tempering recipes. Druid unique items, Bjorn's Fang Tusks, unique gloves. Cataclysm is now guaranteed to strike anything in range, and you deal 40 to 80% times increased damage for the duration of the effect. While Cataclysm is active, you gain unlimited spirit. Okay. Do they know that you can... My brain is just exploding right now. Don't they know that you can have Cataclysm up with 100% uptime? Like, I feel like that's an oversight here. Because you can actually have Cataclysm up with 100% uptime. It's not really that difficult. There's ways to increase the duration of Cataclysm, and there's also ways to decrease the cooldown of Cataclysm. There's spirit boons that increase the duration of Cataclysm, and so forth and so on. So basically, you're giving the druids a way to have infinite spirit. That's kind of crazy. What is my t-shirt about, Joy? This is a t-shirt from the Mr. Beast campaign when he had his candy bars. He had the D's Nuts candy bar. D's Nuts. It's peanut butter and chocolate. What's wrong with peanut butter and chocolate? Legendary aspect of the Rushing Wild's mobility. Casting a companion skill grants 5 to 15% movement speed for 5 seconds, up to 15 to 45%. That's kind of nice. I don't really like them adding more aspects for the companions because there were already too many aspects for the companions. I do like 45% movement speed. Don't get me wrong. That's amazing. But, like, as it is right now, there's so many aspects for the companions that it's hard to fit them all into a build without just being completely gimped, because you got like this one that does like an additional companion, and then you got this one that does like additional damage for the companion, and this one gives the companion your landslide to your poison creeper, and by the time you're done, you've used up all your companion slots for BS. Like I like this aspect, but I would really like it if they just combined it together with like the one that gives you one more companion. Like there's the aspect that gives you one more to all your companions. Just combine this together with the one that gives me +1 to all my companions and call it a day. Now you're cooking with bacon grease. Ultimate Efficiency Resource Tempering Manual, Cataclysm cooldown reduction, Lacerate cooldown reduction, Petrify cooldown reduction, and Grizzly Rage cooldown reduction. So now you can temper on some Cataclysm cooldown reduction, so you can have unlimited spirit. I'm foreseeing this. I'm going to call it right now. This unique item, unless they fix it or change it in some way, is probably going to be like best in slot for just about every single druid out there that's running any kind of build that consumes any kind of spirit, because it literally has... There's no reason why you wouldn't want this. Like, if you're any kind of build that utilizes spirit, boulder builds like the Dolmen Stone, maybe you're running, like your Tornado build or whatever, infinite spirit is not a bad thing in any way, shape, or form. And if you can keep your Cataclysm up 100% of the time, through the Cataclysm cooldown reduction right here that they're giving you. So you just stack on as much cooldown reduction as you can, stack on as much Cataclysm increased duration as you can, and maybe even throw in like a hectic aspect or something to reduce the cooldown a little bit further. You're going to have unlimited spirit 100% of the time, all the time. So that should be fun. Necromancer, Path of Tragul, unique boots. Bone Prison traps a larger area and fires 25 to 35 bone splinters at enemies trapped within. So it goes inward? That seems really neat. Increases your maximum essence by 2 for 8 seconds each time these bone splinters hit an enemy. Okay, so that's going to be very powerful for the Bone Spirit build, the Bone Spear build, and pretty much any build that works on maximum essence specifically, which is pretty much all the bone builds, but also you could do Bone Splinter build as well. That could be very interesting for a Bone Splinter build. I wonder if, got my mind working here, if you set up a Bone Splinter build, basic build, with bone splinters, like double bone splinter firing, used Bone Prison, maybe threw in Bone Spirit as well for the because it's free maximum essence that you're going to be firing off anyway. There's definitely some ways that you could utilize these. These are pretty nice. Legendary aspect of the Unholy Tether mobility. Casting Golem's active skill creates a bond between you for 6 seconds. While the bond is active, both of you are unhindered and gain 25 to 40% movement speed bonus. Unhindered, I believe, means you can move through monsters, not that you're unstoppable. It's two different things. So you're going to be able to run through any monster. They're going to be able to run through any monster. Can't be blocked by anything. And a 40% movement speed as well. Inexorable Reaper's mobility. Sever now dashes you forward to attack instead. This becomes a mobility skill and costs no essence, but has a 22 to 7 second cooldown. So they turned Sever into a dash. That's rather interesting. Aspect of Creeping Mist, mobility, gain 20 to 35% evade cooldown reduction. You can now evade during Blood Mist, traveling twice as far. Entering or exiting Blood Mist resets your evade cooldown. Interesting. Imprisoned Offensive. When Bone Spirit explodes inside of Bone Prison, it explodes an additional time, dealing 40 to 70% of normal damage. Bone Spirit now prioritizes enemies that are inside of a Bone Prison. So this right here, this unique item right here, it seems very specifically designed to function with this new aspect. So obviously, remember I talked earlier, I said you could set up like a basic Bone Splinters build and then use Bone Spirit as well, because obviously you're going to benefit from the maximum essence. Well, yeah, I guess they already thought ahead of me, because there you go. So Bone Spirit is going to target the monsters inside the Bone Prison. Should be kind of fun to build around that. I had actually already planned to do a Bone Spirit Necromancer in Season 5, so I guess this just solidifies that. Tempering recipes, Necromancer Wall, defensive. Skill ranks in Necrotic Carapace, that's your fortification. Skill ranks in Drain Vitality. Minion damage reduction, and a chance for your minions to fortify you for 3% maximum life. Oh, that's pretty neat. I like that. Rogue unique item, a Shroud of Kandurus, unique chest armor. Dark Shroud grants immunity for 3 seconds, but your evade cooldown is increased by 9 to 3 seconds. Evading while Dark Shroud is active leaves behind an explosion that deals shadow damage and pulls enemies in. Immunity. Immunity is a very interesting thing in Diablo 4. It is not unstoppable. Immunity is something else entirely. And I've been testing out immunity and playing around with it. So when you go immune, anything that happens to you while you're immune is shrugged off as if it's nothing. Like if I try to apply a dot to you, like a bleed effect, it doesn't actually affect you. However, if you were bleeding before the immunity happened and you trigger an immunity, you will still be bleeding after the immunity ends. Which is interesting. It also semi-functions as a unstoppable effect, although in a different way. You basically become unstoppable for the 3 seconds. I mean, it seems like a rather powerful item. I'm not really sure how it's going to work its way into builds, but immunity for 3 seconds every single time Dark Shroud grants you a shadow is kind of crazy, especially considering there's an aspect that literally makes it so that you can generate Dark Shrouds like willy-nilly. I can't remember the aspect specifically, but it's like a lucky hit chance that like every time you attack, you get like a chance that you'll generate a Dark Shroud. So you're just going to have like the ability to generate Dark Shrouds randomly. Let's take a look at the aspect real quick just for lulz here. Shouldn't take but a second. Just going to pull up Diablo 4.life and we're going to go to aspects, rogue, and I'm going to type in shroud. So gain a free Dark Shroud every 3 seconds while standing still. Each Dark Shroud shadow grants 4% increased damage reduction. And then there's also Lucky Hit. Critical strikes with marksman skills have up to a 60% chance to grant a free Dark Shroud. So if you used Umbrous Aspect with Enshrouding Aspect, and you use the Shroud of Kandurus, it sounds like they just created a new infinite immunity character. That's kind of hilarious. They literally just nerfed yeah, this is going to get abused in PTR. I'm glad this is going to PTR so we can be like, hey, I think you made another infinite immunity character by accident. You know, I mean, it wasn't really, you know, intentional, but yeah, you know, Shroud of Kandurus kind of makes your character permanently immune to all damage forever. Yeah. Because I can generate Dark Shrouds with Umbrous Aspect by simply attacking and doing critical strikes, and I also get a free one whenever I stand still every 3 seconds, and the immunity lasts for 3 seconds. So as long as I stand still, I'm permanently immune to all damage. Boo! Unless that's not the type of immunity that it means, and then it's a completely different type of immunity, but whatever. That's going to be broken in PTR. Legendary aspects of Nebulous Brew mobility. Using a healing potion grants you a 50% movement speed bonus for 3 seconds. After moving 30 meters, you spawn a healing potion. Interesting. Galvanized Slasher's Resource. Lucky Hit, damaging an enemy with a mobility skill has a 30% chance to fully restore your energy. Maximum energy is increased by 25. That'll work well with the Beastfall boots. Of Iron Rain Offensive Smoke Grenade has a 50% chance to create an Aerostorm where it explodes, dealing physical damage over 3 seconds. Your Aerostorms continuously apply vulnerable effect. Breakneck Bandits Offensive. Flurry deals 15 to 30% increased damage and has a 20% chance to stun enemies for 3 seconds with each hit. Mired Sharpshooter's Utility. Caltrops is now a marksman skill that periodically throws 5 to 20 piercing daggers over its duration, each dealing shadow damage and applying vulnerable for 3 seconds. Okay, that's pretty ridiculous. Tempering recipes for the rogue. Subterfuge expertise, increase smoke grenade damage, increase smoke grenade size, damage for each dark shroud shadow, damage on the next attack after entering stealth. Rogue persistence, increased maximum life percentage gained while dark shroud is active. Increased maximum and all resistances percentages for 5 seconds from health points. What? Increased maximum and all resistance percentage for 5 seconds from health point. I don't understand what that means. Increased skill ranks of Second Wind and increased skill ranks of Aftermath. Health potions, sorry. Sorcerer, unique item, Axial Conduit, unique pants. We got to look at those. Chain Lightning alternates between orbiting you and seeking up to 3 enemies. When it returns, it drains 6 mana from you for each active Chain Lightning. After draining 66 total mana, the bolt explodes, dealing 570% lightning damage. Chain Lightning expires if you don't have enough mana for it to drain. This is they showed this on the stream, and it did look really powerful. We're probably going to see a lot of Chain Lightning sorceresses in the next season. Legendary aspects. Aspect of the Tenuous Agility. Gain 5 to 15% increased movement speed. This bonus is doubled if you haven't used a defensive skill in 8 seconds. Aspect of the Firebird. Gain a Flame Shield enchantment for free. When the Flame Shield activates, meteors fall around you, dealing 70% fire damage. Should be a fun one for a meteor build. Lightning Rod aspect. Chain Lightning has a 5 to 20% chance to chain to an additional time when hitting a crowd-controlled enemy and bosses, and will seek them as targets. Aspect of Elemental Acuity. Casting a Pyromancy, Shock, or Frost skill increases your mana regeneration by 10 to 20% for 5 seconds, once per element. At maximum stacks, the total bonus is increased to 120% for 10 seconds, but all stacks expire after the duration. Aspect of the Orange Herald. Lucky hit up to a 5 to 10% chance when you damage an enemy with a skill to reduce the cooldown of your ultimate skill by 2 seconds. This can only happen once per skill cast. So basically just a way for you to reset your ultimate skill. Trying to think like if that will work surprisingly well or very inefficiently. I mean, it seems like it'll be okay, but a lucky hit 5 to 10% chance isn't massive, so it's not going to go off all the time. It might not be reliable. If you're doing a lucky hit build, it could be pretty impressive. Tempering recipes, Discharge Weapon, plus % chance to cast additional Charge Bolt moved from Shock Augments. Teleport size moved from Shock Augments. % chance for Arc Lash to swipe twice. Did they have that before? Because Arc Lash has always been pretty powerful. Conjuration Weapon, 1 to 2 Hydra heads on cast. That's a big buff for the Hydra sorceresses. Chance for another Ice Blades on cast. That's pretty good for the cooldown reduction from Ice Blades. And chance for another Lightning Spear on cast. All of this is useful, but I think there's a cap on the number of Lightning Spears, and there's a cap on the number of Ice Blades, so it might be less useful than it seems. This +1/2 Hydra heads on cast, though, because there's a cap on Hydras, this one is actually really powerful, because it means your Hydras are going to be more powerful for each Hydra that you cast. I think you can have, 3 or 4 Hydras total, and this is basically just going to give you 2 more Hydra heads. So I don't know if you could stack them, but potentially you could get 4 Hydra heads. So you can have +4 Hydra heads on your Hydras with a total of 4 Hydras. What is that? 4 times 4 for the total number of firing Hydra heads. Conjuration Fortune utility, Hydra lucky hit chance increased, Ice Blade lucky hit chance increased, and Lightning Spear lucky hit chance increased. Elemental Control utility, skill ranks to Convulsions. That's the when you hit a monster with lightning damage, there's a chance to stun them. Snap Freeze is when you hit a monster with cold damage, a chance to freeze them. And Crippling Flames is when you hit a monster with fire damage, a chance to immobilize them. Have I surprised you with my immense knowledge? No, I'm just kidding. Existing tempering recipes additions. Skill ranks to Conduction added to Sorcerer Motion. Ice Armor duration added to Frost Cage. So they're just moving stuff around. Balance updates. Barbarian. Oh no, not the Barbarian. Bash. Adjusted functionality after bashing enemies 4 times. Your next bash will clobber, stunning enemies for 1.5 seconds. Clobber twice as often while using 2-handed weapon. Enhanced Bash. Adjusted functionality. Clobbering an enemy now grants you 20% maximum life as Fortify. Battle Bash. Adjusted functionality. Clobbering an enemy now generates 10 additional Fury. Interesting. Flay. A vulnerable duration increase from 3 to 5. Combat Flay. Damage reduction increase from 3 to 4. Aren't these the same changes that we just got? Maximum stacks increase from 4 to 5. Buff duration increase from 3 to 6 seconds. Yeah, didn't we just get these? Am I like going into the previous changes? Endless Fury no longer requires two-handed weapons. Fury gained from basic skills increased from 30% to 36%. Imposing Presence, maximum health reduced from 18 to 15%. They reducing the Barbarian's health. Who would have thought it? Legendary Aspects, Wanton Rush per Aspect, frequency increased from every 25 seconds to every 15 seconds. So a buff to Rupture. Aspect of Grasping Whirlwind now pulls in new targets 3 times as frequently. So 3 times the pull in on your Grasping Whirlwind. Steadfast Berserker's Aspect no longer requires a lucky hit and now always triggers. That's the, isn't that the one that's for fortification? I don't remember. See, I'm not super smart. I don't remember everything. It is the one for fortification. Never mind. I knew exactly which one it was. I just doubted myself. So it was a lucky hit 35% chance to gain Fortify, and now it's just guaranteed to give you Fortify. So, okay, that's nice. Goer's Devastating Grips. Explosion size now affected by the increase to Whirlwind size. Interesting. Hemorrhage, Legendary Node, now bonus bleeding damage caps at 45%. I saw that coming a mile away. Of course, hemorrhage wasn't really the problem. The actual problem is gushing wounds, not hemorrhage, and also the flay duration. But looks like they capped off hemorrhage, which you can pretty much expect this in the future, is that they've left a lot of these uncapped, a lot of them, and it's stupid. It's stupid that they left them uncapped because people are just going to stack them to the moon. Like, that's what they're going to do. We're not dummies. Like, you gave us a multiplier. To times 2 is better than times 1. Times 10 is better than times 2. Times 100 is better than times 10. Like, we're not dummies. Like, multipliers are multipliers are multipliers. We're going to stack our multipliers as high as we can take them. So I can pretty much expect at this point that we're probably going to see caps on multipliers across the board as they start to figure out where they want to place those caps. They already did the Blood Rage passive, legendary node, and now they've done the Hemorrhage legendary node, and I think we're going to see it in the future. They're going to start capping off other nodes as well. There's no reason not to cap these off, because the way that they have the system setting up with the tempering and having access to everything, like we talked about earlier, Caitlin asked if does the Barbarian just have a severe advantage when it comes to stacking critical strike damage? And the answer is yes, he does. But if they cap off the amount that you can get from critical strike damage by making it so that the multipliers don't go that high, then you might be encouraged to build something else instead of stacking critical strike damage to the moon. Kind of get my picture. Fury gained increased from the Weapon Master legendary node from 4 to 8% maximum Fury. Druid, passive rank bonus for Clarity added to amulets. Okay, Clarity's kind of neat. It's they buffed it. They also took away one of my favorite passives when they did it, but what they added was good. I just wish they hadn't taken away my original Clarity ability to do it. Skills, Landslide, damage per hit landslide increased from 37% to 70%. Total damage increased. Damage area increased from 1.5 to 2. Doubled the amount of pillars. So big buff for landslide druids. Shred, first attack damage buff increased to 52%, second increased to 72%, and third increased to 143%. Pulverized damage buffed from 50 to 92.5%. Tornado damage buffed from 35 to 65%. Lightning storm damage buffed from 40 to 74%. Hurricane damage buffed from 187 to 346%. Wow. Ravens can now be cast while moving. Poison Creeper can now be cast while moving. Lacerate damage area increased from 1 to 2, so a bigger area on Lacerate. Casting Lacerate now teleports to the targets instead of starting at the caster. Interesting. So it's more like the, Sevenfold Fist from Diablo 3? Remember when you'd use that and it would just like bounce you all around the whole screen and it would hit everything? It was pretty powerful. Lacerate, how it worked before, was not really all that powerful, to be perfectly honest. Cataclysm Lightning Strike rate doubled, so big buffs to Cataclysm this season. Not only is Cataclysm getting cooldown reductions, not only is it getting a unique item, which makes it so that you have infinite spirit while it's active, but we've also got more Lightning Strikes as well. So it's getting huge buffs across the board. Grizzly Rage, cooldown for this ability now starts after Grizzly Rage ends. Previous shapeshift into Dire Werebear for 10 seconds, gaining 20% bonus and damage 20% reduction. Damage bonus is now increased by 3% for each second while in this form. Kills extend the duration by 1 second. Okay. And now the new version is shapeshift into the Dire Werebear for 10 seconds, gaining 30% multiplier damage and 20% damage reduction. So they increased it by 10% on the multiplier. Damage bonus is increased by 3% reduction, 3% each second while in this form, up to a maximum of 75%. Kills extend the duration by 1 second, but the duration cannot go above 10 seconds. Interesting. So they're kind of like putting a cap on these forms, it seems like. They did the same thing for the Sorceress and the Flame Shield. It looks like all the forms are going to be getting these weird caps on them, and the cooldown is going to be after it ends, not when you use it. So like before, basically, like pretend the cooldown was 60 seconds and it lasted for 10 seconds, right? If I press the ability, then the cooldown would start, and by the time the ability ended after 10 seconds, it would be 50 seconds left until I could reuse it, right? Well, now it's going to be you press the button and it lasts for 10 seconds, and then the cooldown starts at 60 seconds after the ability ends, which means you're no longer getting the duration of the ability subtracted from the ability's cooldown. Now the cooldown is going to start after the ability ends, and so you don't get to benefit from that duration of the ability, which may also work for Cataclysm too, to prevent Cataclysm from being an infinite use ability, but we'll see. They didn't put anything in here specifically about Cataclysm's cooldown starting after the end, but it doesn't really matter anyway. I imagine that if you focused enough on cooldown reduction and some various things, you could probably still keep Cataclysm up with a near 100% uptime. Debilitating Roar, damage reduction decreased from 70 to 40%. Decreased? Oh man, Debilitating Roar nerf. Earthen Bulwark, previous, rocks around you for 3 seconds, granting barrier that absorbs 45% of your base life and damage. Now, rocks around you for 3 seconds, granting barrier that absorbs 45% of your maximum life in damage. So they changed it from base to maximum. We're seeing these changes across the board because of how huge the disparity is between your base and your max life now. So you have somebody who has a base life of only like 40,000 HP, but then their max life is like 500,000 because they've got all these buffs and percentage increases and all this other stuff. And so having a Earthen Bulwark based off of base life basically makes it useless to anybody who has their life at really high levels. So this is going to be a big buff for Earthen Bulwark in general, because now the barrier is going to be based off your maximum life instead. Cyclone Armor non-physical damage reduction increased from 10 to 15%. They talked about this one, which was the Shepherd is getting changed to no longer have the Core and Wrath skills deal 20% additional damage for each companion that you have. So basically, they're just kind of like changing it into a regular damage buff for the companions. And they said that they're taking this damage and just adding it directly to the skills so that you don't have to run these things and feel like you're missing out. So it's not really a nerf so much as it's just, you know, they're trying to like free your hands so you don't have to run the companions to get the damage. Skinwalker, when you're shapeshifting in a skill transforms you gain 2 to 5 life. If you're at full life, you gain the same amount as 4 to 5. Now, when you shapeshift, you use a shapeshifting skill that changes your form, you gain 5 to 20% life. If you were at full life, gain the same amount as 4 to 5. That's a pretty big change. Aftershock, delay from the second set of landslides slightly decreased. Lupine Ferocity, reduced the amount of hits from 6 to 3 to benefit from the effects. Vigilance, damage reduction increased for each skill rank from 5 to 7%. Damage reduction increased on Iron Fur from 3 to 4% for each skill rank. Heightened Senses, damage reduction increased for each skill rank from 2 to 3. Legendary Aspects, Metamorphic Stone Aspect no longer removes Wraith skill tag from Boulder. Okay, so that means Boulder will now classify as a core and a Wraith skill, not just a core or a wraith skill. So the Metamorphic Stone aspect turned Boulder into a core skill and took away the Wrath tag. So now it's going to have both the core skill and the Wrath tag when you use Metamorphic Stone, which means that the Dolmen Stone build is going to be even stronger now since you can scale based off of both of those modifiers. Paragon Thunderstruck Legendary Node now has a maximum bonus capped at 40%. I saw that coming. Didn't I just say you were going to see a whole bunch of more of these multiplier caps? And look, here we go. We already got another multiplier cap. So Thunderstruck is getting capped at 40. Thunderstruck is a huge one that allows you to scale based off of close damage and distant damage. And the people were utilizing the tempering system along with the greater affixes to get some absolutely insane distant damage bonuses just to scale Thunderstruck as high as they possibly could. I mean, if you think about it, I think you could get like 150% distant damage on a temper, and then you could greater affix roll that thing 3 times to a full master working, and I think it was something like 300 or 400% like distant damage once it was all finished. And so the amount of additional like multiplier that you were able to get out of Thunderstruck node was massive. So they're putting an end to those shenanigans. So for those characters who spent like many hours masterworking and grinding out pieces of equipment that had perfect distant damage modifiers, I mean, you're pretty much screwed at this point. I mean, you could still play it for this season, but next season it's not gonna work. Human Glyph, damage bonus increased from 6.6 to 9.9%. Damage reduction increased from 10 to 15%. Protector Glyph, damage reduction increased from 10 to 15%. Werebear Glyph, damage bonus increased from 6.9 to 9.9% damage increase. And damage reduction increased from 10 to 15%. Werewolf Glyph, damage reduction increased from 10 to 15. So a lot of buffs to damage reduction across the board, but I think this is a pretty big nerf to most of the storm builds. I think if you're doing any kind of storm build or werewolf storm build, tornado druids, wind shear druids, I mean, there's a long list of druids that use the Thunderstruck node as their main scaling multiplier, and that is not going to be nice for them. Necromancer, Book of the Dead. Necromancer minion attacks can now overpower. Interesting. Minions are now more aggressive and will automatically engage nearby enemies. Golem, active ability. If the golem is far from the target location, it will now leap to the target. Iron Golem slam size increased by 56%. That's the Hulk smash. They talked about that in the Campfire chat, as the golems are now going to Hulk smash. All the golems will Hulk smash. Sever, primary damage increased from 80 to 110. The secondary damage increased from to 45%, and lucky hit chance increased from 20 to 25%. Blight, damage over time increased from 105 to 135%, so buff for Blight. Bloodwave, damage increased from 150 to 450%. Bloodwave, massive increase there. That's a 300% increase over its original value of 150. Passives, Shadow Blight. Hits required reduced from 10 to 8. A big buff for Shadow Blight Necromancers. Damage increased from 22% to 44%. Another big buff to Shadow Blight Necromancers. Hellbent Commander, your previously minions dealt 45% increased damage while you were close to them. Now, while you control at least 7 minions, they deal 30% increased damage. So they took away the close requirement. I think there were some bugs going on with this close too. There were sometimes, like, if you were close to the monster and then your minions were close to the monster, they were getting like a double multiplier or something. So maybe that's another reason why they changed this. Legendary aspects, Blighted aspect, bonus damage after triggering Shadow Blight key time 10 times reduced from 60 to 120% times to 50% times. Oof. Blighted aspect has been disappointingly large source of damage for Shadow Blight based necromancers, giving far more power than we normally give for a single aspect. To compensate for this change, we are increasing the baseline power of Darkness core skills and Shadow Blight with the goal of keeping these builds at approximately the same overall power. Unfortunately, it's not going to work that way because this aspect, the Blighted aspect, was actually what was responsible for the Necromancer Golem hitting for like freaking billions of damage. So by nerfing this, they're going to deliberately nerf the Golem builds and probably also most of the Blighted builds too. It'll be We'll have to see if the changes that they made to the shadow skills make up for the difference, but it's kind of hard to make up for a 240 times multiplier. And that's basically what was going on here, is most of the people who were using this were throwing this on like a two-hander, and they were getting a 240 times multiplier through the blighted aspects. And so, like, generating as many shadow blights as they could, as quickly as they could, they were able to maintain this 240 times multiplier pretty much permanently. And so now, even at its best, it's only going to be a 100 times multiplier, which isn't even really all that great. It's a, I might not even, I don't even know if I'm going to use it or not. I might just leave it out of the build and use a different one instead. There's other aspects I think that could provide me with a 50 times multiplier. So they may have just killed this aspect entirely, to be honest. It might not even be worth using anymore. Aspect of Bursting Bones, Bone Prison, burst damage increased from 9 to 12 to 175 to 120% of weapon damage. I actually tried to use Bursting Bones this season, and it was pathetic. So very good change across the board. It'll be interesting to see how this progresses. Aspect of the Empowering Reaper, chance for Sever to create Blight increased from 25 to 30%. Blight bonus damage increased from 100% times to 120% times. Aspect of the Hungry Blood, additional blood lance damage increased from 48 to 70%. Aspect of the Grasping Veins, critical strike chance after casting corpse tendrils reduced from 25 to 20%. Critical strike damage to enemies damaged by corpse tendrils reduced from 50% to 40%. Critical strike damage bonus now lasts for 6 seconds rather than indefinitely. I never knew that it lasted indefinitely. Interesting. Cadaverous aspect, previous consuming a corpse increases the damage of your next core skill by 5 to 10% up to 50%. Now consuming a corpse increases the damage of your core skills by 6% for 5 seconds up to 30%. So a nerf to Cadaverous aspect. Torturous aspect, previous Iron Maiden is also a darkness skill, now deals shadow damage, blah blah blah, can stun. Now Iron Maiden now is also a darkness skill and deals shadow damage. Enemies have a 10 to 25% chance to be stunned for 1 second when they take damage from Iron Maiden. So instead of setting it up so that when they are hit by Iron Maiden, now it's the other way around, which is when they take damage from Iron Maiden, which is, it's a simple change, but it should have a rather drastic effect on how often it goes off. Blood Moon Breaches, bonus overpower to cursed enemies increased from 70 times to 100 times. Cura's Embrace, core damage, skill damage, affix replaced to Ranks of Bloodtide passive. Ring of Mendelin, lucky hit chance, affix replaced with summoning skill damage. Death Speaker's Pendant, summoning skill damage, affix replaced with movement speed. I'm not really sure about that one, because isn't the Ring of Mendelin a lucky hit ability? And so why would you remove the lucky hit chance from that? Oh, thank you for the hydrate. Actually pretty thirsty. I don't know. That seems like a misstep. Or at least they should have, if they wanted to add summoning damage, they probably should have removed one of the other ones instead of lucky hit. Wither, legendary Paragon node, intelligence scaling now capped at 1200 intelligence. Interesting. 1200 is low. That is really low. Is that low? Like, I mean, you guys in chat are listening. I mean, how low is that really? Like, I feel like necromancers can easily get to 2000, if not way higher, by accident. Like, not even stacking it. You're just like, you know, you got intelligence on each piece of equipment and, you know, whatever. And then, like, you just end up getting way higher than 1200. So 1200 is going to be the cap for Wither, which is going to be super easy for any necromancer to hit. So you're just going to be automatically capped for the Wither node. Rogue, maximum arrow storms increase from 5 to 7. Preparation, previous every 75 energy you spend reduces your ultimate's cooldowns by 5 seconds. Using an ultimate skill resets the cooldown of your other skills. I've used this many times. Now spend energy to reduce your ultimate skill's cooldown by 5 seconds. Ultimate skills reset the other cooldowns and grant a 15% damage reduction for 8 seconds. Interesting. So they added 15% DR every single time you're able to activate the ultimate skill. So Keeping your ultimate skill active 100% of the time would be a 15% damage reduction 100% of the time. Blade Shift, damage increased by 50%. Previously, quickly stab your victim for damage and shift, allowing you to move freely through the enemies for 4 seconds. Now, quickly stab your victim for damage and shift, making you unhindered for 4 seconds. Developers note, unhindered allows you to move through enemies and prevents your movement speed from being lowered. Fundamental Blade Shift, enemies moved through needed to activate days reduced from 5 to 3. Primary Blade Shift, control impairing effects, reduction increased from 20 to 30%. Invigorating Strike, damage increased by 20%. Enhanced Twisting Blades, return damage bonus increased from 30 to 35. Shadow Damage, damage increased by 11%. Enhanced Shadow Step, previous damaging an enemy with Shadow Step increases your critical strike chance against them by 8% for 3 seconds. Now, damaging an enemy with Shadow Step dazes and applies vulnerable to them for 3 seconds. So they took the critical strike chance away. Methodical Shadow Step, previous enemies damaged by Shadow Step are stunned for 2 seconds. Now, after Shadow Stepping, you gain 20% damage reduction for 3 seconds. Disciplined Shadow Step, previous Shadow Step's cooldown is reduced by 3 seconds when it damages an enemy. You have not hit Shadow Step within the last 4 seconds. Now, damaging an enemy with Shadow Step stuns them for 2 seconds and reduces its cooldown by 3. Personally, I don't like these really short damage reductions. 20% damage reduction for 3 seconds might sound like it's important or useful in any way, shape, or form, but a lot of the time what happens is you Shadow Step, you get the 20% damage reduction, a monster hits you, you feel invincible, then it wears off, and then they hit you again and you die. The 3 second, these little tiny damage reduction pumps for little tiny durations usually end up being more harm than good because they have varying, fluctuating survivability, which means that sometimes you're a god and sometimes you're a peon. And, you know, like there's no in between. Dash damage increased by 25%. Additionally, functionally, dash slows enemies hit by 30% for 3 seconds. Previous enemies damaged by dash take 15% critical strike damage from you 3 seconds. Now casting dash increases your critical strike chance for 10% by 5 seconds. Discipline dash slows enemies hit by 30% for 3 seconds. Any enemy already slowed will be dazed for 2 seconds instead. Now at the end of dash, knock down surrounding enemies for 2 seconds and deal 350% of its damage to them. Methodical dash, previous dealing damage to crowd control enemies with dash reduces its charge cooldown by 0.5 seconds up to 4 seconds per cast. Now dash has a 1 additional charge and its charge cooldown is reduced by 2 seconds. Flurry, lucky hit increased from 10 to 13%. Enhanced Flurry, previous, each time Flurry damages a crowd-controlled enemy or a vulnerable enemy, you are healed for 1% of your maximum life up to 12% of maximum life per cast. Now, each time a Flurry damages an enemy, it has a 10% chance to apply vulnerable for 3 seconds, and deals 1% increased damage for 5 seconds after hitting a vulnerable enemy up to total of 50%. So they took away the healing on Flurry. Interesting. Advanced Flurry, previous evading through an enemy will cause your next Flurry to deal 30% increased damage and stun them for 2.5 seconds. Now, successive casts of Fury increase its damage by 15% and reduce its energy cost by 10% up to 3 times. Improved Flurry. Previous Flurry deals 20% increased damage to vulnerable targets. If Flurry hits a vulnerable enemy, you will make the enemy vulnerable for 3 seconds. Now, casting Flurry dashes you to the target and heals for 10% of your maximum life. What did they do? Just flip the 2 around? Kind of-ish. Yeah, let's kind of flip the 2 around. Caltrops damage increased by 13%. Disciplined Caltrops critical strike chance bonus increased from 5 to 10%. Dark Shroud, you can now only lose 1 Dark Shroud every 1.5 seconds. Enhanced Dark Shroud. Previous Dark Shroud shadows have a 14% chance to not be consumed. Now, each active Dark Shroud grants you 5% increased movement speed and also has a 15% chance to not be consumed. Subverting Dark Shroud. Each active shadow from Dark Shroud grants you 4% increased movement speed. Now you heal for 10% of your maximum life when a Dark Shroud shadow is removed. Countering Dark Shroud. You only need 1 active shadow to get bonus critical strike chance of 2. Critical strike chance is increased from 8 to 10%. You can now only lose 1 Dark Shroud shadow every 1.5 seconds. So they're no longer consumed when you're attacked? Or they're still consumed when you're attacked, but you can't lose multiple within a 1.5 second duration. So if I get hit before, I think this is what they're saying. So before, if you got hit 5 times in 1 second, you would lose 5 shadows. I think what they're saying is that now you can only lose 1 shroud every 1.5 seconds, no matter how many times you get hit. So if you get hit 10 times in 1.5 seconds, you only lose 1 Dark Shroud shadow, which means that to lose all of your Dark Shroud shadows, which I think is what total is max is 5, that's 1.5, so that's 3, 6, it's like 7.5 seconds to lose all of your Dark Shrouds. So it should be next to impossible to run out of Dark Shrouds in an encounter as long as you're pressing that button over and over again. Smoke Grenade, additional functionality. Smoke Grenade now deals 45% physical damage, has a 25% lucky hit chance, and skill ranks now increase damage and cooldown reduction. Enhanced Smoke Grenade. Previous enemies affected by Smoke Grenade take 25% increased damage from you. Now enemies hit by Smoke Grenade take 25% increased damage from you for 5 seconds. Countering Smoke Grenade. Previous lucky hit dealing direct damage to enemies affected by Smoke Grenade has up to a 25% chance to reduce its cooldown for 1 second or by 3 seconds instead of if the enemy is vulnerable. Now hitting an elite or boss with Smoke Grenade, it reduces its cooldown by 5 seconds. Subverting Smoke Grenade. Previous, if an enemy is vulnerable, slowed, or chilled, then Smoke Grenade will daze them for 20% longer. Now Smoke Grenade deals poison damage and applies another 45% poisoning damage over 5 seconds. Oh, interesting. So they turned Smoke Grenade into a poison attack. Poison rogues rejoice, you have a new poison attack that you can utilize. Poison imbuement, poison duration increased from 5 to 6 seconds. Enhanced poison imbuement. Poison imbuement's duration is increased by 1 second. Previous, casting poison imbuement generates 30 energy, increased by 2 for each nearby poisoned enemy. Poison trap, damage increased by 36%. Subverting poison trap, poison damage bonus increased from 10 to 15%. Countering poison trap, chance to reset imbuments increased from 30 to 40%. Penetrating shot, new functionality. Now deals 10% increased damage per enemy it pierces. Interesting. Enhanced penetrating shot. Previous penetrating shot deals 10% increased damage for each enemy it pierces. Now casting penetrating shot and hitting a boss or elite has a 25% chance to fire an additional shot for free. Wow. Okay. So they're trying to beef up penetrating shot's ability to kill single targets. That's basically what they're doing. They're like, penetrating shot is an amazing ability for killing, giant hordes of monsters, but sucks at killing bosses, sucks at killing elites, right? So they're trying to give it a way to function against bosses and elites, which is good. It needs it. Rain of Arrows. Casting speed has been increased by 30%. Very good. Lucky hit chance increased from 2 to 4. Cooldown reduced from 55 to 50 seconds. I actually have a Rain of Arrows character. Sorry, my throat's getting real dry. Oh, yeah. That's where it's at. Passives, concussive, renamed to unstable elixirs. Previous, after knocking back or knocking down an enemy, you gain 4% increased critical strike chance for 4 seconds. Now, using a healing potion stuns surrounding enemies for 2 seconds and increases your damage by 6% for 5 seconds. What are they trying to do? Make healing potion builds? I mean, they've got like a thing where it's like spamming the healing potion gives you, a stun and increases your damage. And then they had another thing up there that was healing potion related. Rapid Gambits. Previous, your evade cooldown is reduced by 0.5 seconds when you daze an enemy. Now, evading through an enemy dazes them for 2 seconds. Your evade cooldown is reduced by 0.25 seconds when you daze an enemy. Trick attacks. Previous, when you critically strike a dazed enemy, they are knocked down for 0.5 seconds. Now, dazing a stunning enemy increases your critical strike chance by 2% and critical strike damage for 2% for 5 seconds, both up to 12. Impetus. New functionality added. Visuals to show when the effect is ready. Previous, after moving 12 meters, your next non-basic attack deals 7% increased damage. Now, after moving 15 meters, your next core or ultimate attack deals 8% increased damage. While the damage bonus remains, your agility and subterfuge skills deal 4% increased damage. Interesting. Malice. Previous, you deal 3% increased damage to vulnerable enemies. Now you deal 4% increased damage to vulnerable enemies. Also, or knock down enemies. Alchemical Advantage. Previous, you gain 1% increased attack speed for each enemy you've poisoned up to 15%. Now, dealing poison damage increases your attack speed and lucky hit chance by 1% for 8 seconds up to 5. The maximum stack potential increases by 5% with each skill rank. So up to 15% total. But you also get lucky hit now as well as, so that's kind of interesting. Second win. The previous, every 100 energy you spend grants 5% increased lucky hit chance for 5 seconds. Now, every 100 energy you spend grants 15% of your maximum life as a barrier for 3 seconds. I don't like that. I like the 100 energy you spend increases lucky hit chance. I use that on a couple of my builds. Aftermath. Previous, after using an ultimate skill, restore 30 energy. Now, while an ultimate skill is on your action bar, you heal for 0.5 maximum life every second. After using an ultimate, restore 25 energy. Weapon Mastery. Dagger damage to healthy enemies increased from 5 to 6%. Key passive, Victimize. The explosion damage of Victimize has been increased by 50% to compensate for the bug fix below. So Victimize was bugged this season, if you guys were unaware. Momentum. Previous cutthroat skills granted to stack momentum for 8 seconds if they either hit a stunned, dazed, or frozen enemy, or hit any enemy from behind. While at 3 stacks of momentum, you gain 20% increased damage reduction, 30% increased regeneration, and 15% movement speed. Now, casting cutthroat skill grants a stack of momentum, and casting a non-cutthroat skill removes the stack of momentum. For each stack of momentum, you gain 3% damage reduction, 3% maximum energy, and 3% energy regeneration, and 3% movement speed up to 30%. Legendary aspects. Enshrouding aspect. Gain a free Dark Shroud every 3 seconds while standing still. Each Dark Shroud grants 4% increased damage reduction. Using a healing potion now makes a free Dark Shroud Shadow. Each Shadow grants 2.5 to 4% increased damage reduction. So, on one hand, it looks like they closed the loophole, which would allow you to become infinitely invulnerable, right? On the other hand, they made a change that allowed you to use healing potions while you were under the effect of a crowd control. Because Dark Shrouds now make you immune for 3 seconds, this is basically a loophole which is going to allow you to use your healing potion to become immune. So if you use a healing potion while you were under the effect of a crowd control, or actually even if you're not under the effect of a crowd control, with the new unique item, you basically just get free invulnerability because it's going to create a Dark Shroud every single time you use a potion, and you get a free invulnerability immunity for 3 seconds upon gaining a Dark Shroud Shadow. So you're basically just going to be able to go potion, immune, 3 seconds. Wait 3 seconds, potion, immune. 3 seconds, wait 3 seconds, potion, immune. I mean, I think what they were trying to do was fix the loophole, but then by making potions usable while you were under the effects of a crowd control, they basically made it so that you can just spam immunities forever. And not only that, but you can get yourself out of a crowd control effect with a potion now too through this. This whole thing's going to be silly. You just watch. Yeah, and they added an item that gives free health potions and movement speed, exactly like Ghost Dragon. So you basically got like infinite potions, and infinite potions means infinite immunity, and infinite immunity means we're right back where we started. Except it's not the sorceress this time, now it's the rogue that's doing it. Of arrow storms, previous lucky hit, your marksman skills have a 25% chance to create an arrow storm at the enemy's location, dealing physical damage over 3 seconds, and your arrow storms deal 34 to 40% increased damage. Lucky hit, your marksman skill and cutthroat skills have a 25% chance to create an arrow storm at the enemy's location, so they added cutthroat, and then they increased the damage by 20%, it looks like. Vengeful, arrow storm damage increased from 40 to 60, another 20% increase. Ravager, damage bonus to Shadow Step increased from 10% to 12%. Tricksters, previous Calstrops throw a cluster of exploding stun grenades. They deal total physical damage, yada, yada, yada. Now, Caltrops and smoke grenades receive a stun grenade benefit and throw stun grenades. that deal physical damage and stun enemies for 1 second. Your stun grenades deal 25 to 40% increased damage. Of Noxious Ice got a 5% increase to its damage output. Of Bursting Venoms, Toxic Pool Poisoning damage increased by 24%. Of Volatile Shadows, Dark Shroud Shadow Explosion damage increased by 50%. Of Stolen Vigor, each stack of the Momentum key passive heals you for life per second and grants you 5% damage reduction. Now, while at maximum stacks, the Momentum key passive, your Cutthroat skills deal 20 to 35% increased damage, and you become unstoppable for 3 seconds every 8 seconds. What? So every 3 seconds out of 8 seconds, you're unstoppable? That's going to interact very interestingly with the Bolt's Will, for sure. Yes, Pursuit of Likes. They added a unique plate that allows you to generate immunity through generating Dark Shroud. It was up there somewhere. Unique items, Saboteur's Signet. Casting Flurry has a 15 to 30% chance to release stun grenades that deal physical damage and stun enemies for 1 second. Your grenade skills have a 2% lucky hit chance. Now, casting a core skill has a 15 to 30% chance to throw a stun grenade. So they changed it from Flurry to core skills. Physical damage and stun enemies. So a very simple change, but it's definitely going to be more broadly usable across all the core skills now. And they also increased the lucky hit chance by 3%. Wind Force, ranks of Concussive changed to ranks of Malice. Vulnerable damage changed to Dexterity. Previous lucky hits with this weapon have a 40% chance to deal double damage and knock back the target. Now Barrage has a 40% chance to knock back or knock down enemies with each hit and deal double damage. So they changed Wind Force into a barrage item. That's odd. Not really sure how I feel about that. I like Wind Force being a generic item that's good across all classes. Changing it into specifically a barrage item is kind of odd. Scoundrel's Kiss. Explosion radius increased by 10%. Visual effect for the physical damage has been improved to be more consistent. Writhing Band of Trickery. Decoy Trap increased by 8%. Word of a Con, previous, your Rain of Arrows is always imbued with all imbuements at once. Now, your Rain of Arrows is always imbued with all imbuements at once and receives your Arrow Storm benefits. Oh, okay. So stacking Arrow Storm with Rain of Arrows is going to be a build now. I actually have a Rain of Arrows rogue that I was working on. I almost said Amazon in the season 4. So since that's going to be copied over, we'll do some testings with the Rain of Arrows rogue, and we'll see how well that works. Paragon, Tricks of the Trade Legendary Node. Previous, your Marksman skills grant you next Cutthroat skill 25% increased damage, and your Cutthroat skills grant your next Marksman skill 25% increased damage. Now, your Marksman skills grant your Cutthroat skills 25% increased damage for 8 seconds, and your Cutthroat skills grant your Marksman skills 25% increased damage for 8 seconds. This is a huge change, in my opinion. Before, you basically had to go Marksman, Cutthroat, Marksman, Cutthroat, Marksman, Cutthroat, Marksman, Cutthroat, Marksman, Cutthroat, Marksman, Cutthroat. You couldn't, you literally had to alternate back and forth between the two, and it made for a very poor gameplay style, especially when a lot of the times you were utilizing, say, like a Marksman skill for your basic or a Cutthroat skill for your basic, and then you were switching to a Marksman or Cutthroat for your core, and so you were going like basic core, basic core, basic core, basic core, and it's untenable because of course you can't generate enough resource in one basic skill to fire off a core skill, so a lot of the times it just didn't really work out right. So that should help out a lot the people who are trying to actually utilize that, in a functional way, switching back and forth between Marksman and Cutthroat skills. Cheap Shot Legendary Node. Previous, you deal 5% increased damage for each nearby enemy that is crowd controlled, up to 25%. Now you deal 5% increased damage for each nearby enemy that is crowd controlled, up to 25%. And a nearby staggered boss provides the maximum bonus. So again, they're trying to add in boss killing potential into these things. Exploit Weakness Legendary Node. Previous, when you deal damage to a vulnerable enemy, they take 1% increased damage from you for 6 seconds, up to 25%. Now, Lucky Hit, direct damage to a vulnerable enemy has up to a 45% chance to increase your damage by 1%, up for 25 seconds, up to 50%. At 50 stacks, this bonus resets, and you'll execute all nearby non-boss enemies. So basically, what they're trying to do here, again, is another boss killer thing. So in a situation where you're fighting a really pathetic monster, you fight the monster, you're probably not going to get this bonus. If you're fighting an elite, you might get this bonus, and you might get at least somewhere in between half way to 50%. But when you're fighting a boss, and the boss has a particularly high amount of HP, you're going to be stacking this for a very long time until you hit that 50%. And then once you hit that 50%, your boss killing potential is going to go up. So they're basically making it so that you have some sort of boss killing potential item. Exploit weakness is probably going to be mandatory for pretty much everybody now. At that point. No Witness legendary node is now capped at a maximum damage bonus of 35%. Wow, okay. This is to compensate for increased sources of ultimate skill damage added to the Rogue Paragon board this season. I mean, I literally was running this earlier, and I could barely even reach like 30% because there wasn't enough ultimate skill bonuses, but I guess we're going to cap out pretty fast now. Leyrana's Instinct legendary node is now capped at a maximum damage of 35%. Color rare node execute chance changed to ultimate damage. Magic nodes in this cluster that gave execute chance now give ultimate damage. Ruin rare node damage to healthy changed to ultimate skill damage. Magic nodes in this cluster that gave damage to healthy now give ultimate damage. Sorcerer crackling energy base damage increased by 10% to 30%. Ice armor max life based shield amount increased to 40%. No longer gains increased shield based on damage. Charge bolts base damage increased from 30 to 38%. Enhanced charge bolts explosion damage increased from 150 to 175% of charge bolts damage. Spark base damage per hit increased from 10 to 12. Enhanced spark damage increased from 8 to 10. Glinting spark previous spark grants 2% increased critical strike chance per cast for 5 seconds up to 8%. Now Spark grants 2% increased critical strike chance per cast for 5 seconds up to a maximum of 8%. At max stacks, your Sparks hits grant 1 mana. That's actually kind of big, especially since there's multiple Sparks. So sounds like Spark might be a fun one for generating mana. Blizzard base damage increased from 130 to 150%. Enhanced Blizzard damage to frozen enemies increased from 25 to 40%. I'm not really sure they understand that damage to frozen enemies, damage to crowd-controlled enemies, damage to stunned enemies, damage to knockdown enemies, damage to anything that doesn't apply to bosses is not helpful. I don't think Blizzard sorceresses really have an issue with much of the game right now and can pretty much freeze and walk through most content. But when they get to bosses, when Frozen Orb sorceresses get to bosses, when all these damage to crowd-controlled enemies get to bosses, that's when things are an issue. Like, they don't really need more damage to frozen enemies. They need more damage to bosses. Hydra, base damage increased from 14 to 16%. Summon Hydra, burn damage increased from 60% to 100%. So with the addition of that tempering manual too, I think we might see the season of the Hydra coming back. I don't think there's been a season of the Hydra in a long time, but it looks like the Hydra could be pretty powerful this season. We got a couple people in the kinship who love Hydras. Meow, I'm looking at you. Inferno, base damage increased by 20%, flickering arc lash, 6% movement speed for 5 seconds for each enemy hit with arc lash up to 18%. Now arc lash grants 5 mana if your swipe hits at least one enemy, and when you hit 3 or more enemies or a boss, your next swipe also deals 50% more damage. Chain lightning now tracks how many chain lightnings are out. Greater chain lightning previous, each time chain lightning bounces, it deals 5% increased damage for its duration. Now, each time chain lightning bounces, it deals 10% increased damage for its duration up to 30%. Chain lightning enchantment now has a 4-second cooldown. No longer tracks mana or sends out chain lightnings if the instance of mana drain is from an auto-cast skill. Ice armor, max life base shield amount increased from 25 to 40%, no longer gains increased shield based on damage. Flame shield, cooldown begins when invulnerability ends. Enhanced lightning spear, previous, after critically striking, lightning spear gains 5% increased stacking, critical strike chance for its duration. Casting lightning spear now spawns an additional lightning spear and increases their critical strike chance by 15%. Wizard's Blizzard. Some Harry Potter references. Previous, while Blizzard is active, your core skill costs 27% less mana. Now, while Blizzard is active, you gain 1 mana regeneration for every 20 maximum mana. So the higher your mana, the higher the regeneration that it's going to give you. I mean, what is that? That's 5 for a standard 100 mana sorceress. That's 10 for a 200, 15 for a 300. That's kind of powerful. Teleport cooldown increased from 11 to 14. Base damage increased from 25 to 35%. Convulsion stun chance increased from 5 to 7%. Crippling flames immobilize chance increased from 5 to 7. Snap freeze chance increased from 5 to 7. Static discharge chance to spawn crackling energy increased from 5 to 6. Shocking impact damage for each rank increased from 40 to 50%. Base burning damage increased from 20 to 40% on combustion. Veer's Mastery. Previous close damage increased. Take 15% increased damage from your shock skills and deal 20% less damage to you. Critical strikes increase these bonuses to 20% and 25% respectively for 3 seconds. Now, when you critically strike an enemy with a shock skill, you become charged and take 25% less damage for 5 seconds. While charged, critical strikes have a 10% chance to cause the damage to arc as lightning damage to another nearby enemy, or if there are no other targets, you hit the target and gain a 250% increased damage. Shock Sorcerer is often highly incentivized to play in close combat. This rework aims to open up the Shock Sorcerer playstyle, allowing for both close and ranged options while maintaining the defensive capability of the original design that players love. Legendary Aspects, movement speed for charged aspect bonus increased from 20 to 25. Aspect of Efficiency, mana cost reduction increased from 25% to 50%. Aspect of the Engulfing Flames, burning damage to enemies below 50% life increased from 30% to 45%. Aspect of Abundant Energy, previous Crackling Energy has a 50% chance to chain to additional enemies. Crackling Energy has a 35 to 50% chance to deal 40% times increased damage and chain to an additional enemy. Aspect of the Splintering Energy, previous casting a Lightning Spear always spawns an additional Lightning Spear and increases your damage with shock skills by X for Y seconds. Critical strikes with Lightning Spears cause lightning to arc from it, dealing X damage to its target and up to 5 other enemies. This damage is increased by your critical strike damage bonus. So they took away the free Lightning Spear but gave you a damage instead. Aspect of Binding Embers. Previous Flame Shield lets you move unhindered through enemies. Enemies you move through while Flame Shield is active are immobilized. Now, Flame Shield grants you unhindered for its duration, and enemies you move through while Flame Shield is active are immobilized for X number of seconds. I'm having a hard time understanding what they changed. I think it's just the unhindered thing. So they added this new thing, it's called Unhindered, and I think they're just working it in place of the moving Unhindered. Now you're actually going to gain the Unhindered status effect, which is different apparently from the previous one that they used. I think that's all they really changed there. Aspect of Frozen Wake, Ice Spike damage increased from 80% to 100%. Now has a 15% extra damage to Ice Spikes instead of 15% extra chill. Aspect of Frozen Tundra, Deep Freeze. Ice Spike damage increased from 80% to 120%. Glacial Aspect now has a 15% extra chill with Ice Spikes instead of a 15% extra damage. Paragon, Burning Instinct. Burning Instinct critical strike bonus reduced from 1% per 25 intelligence to 1% per 50 intelligence, and now caps at 40% times. Ceaseless Conduit, crackling energy damage reduced from 3% per 20 intelligence to 1% per 25 intelligence, and now caps at 60% times. Elemental Summoner now caps at its damage bonus at 30% times. Icefall damage with frost skills increased from 15 to 18%. As you can see, like I was talking about earlier, they're putting caps on everything now. I mean, that's just what's going to happen. I think that they realized that they're stupid. And by putting these bonuses in here and having no cap on them, and I think now that they're realizing how dumb they were to have these bonuses with no caps, hey, guess what? Now we got caps. And they're going to start putting caps on everything, so expect it. Unleash Glyph, increase the damage bonus from 7 to 8%. Increased mana generation from 7 to 25%. Icefall damage with frost skills increased from 15 to 18%. Tempering updates. The following tempering affixes have been moved from existing tempering recipes onto new recipes in the utility category. Note, we are looking to expand what affixes are available within the utility category to bring more depth and variety to tempering. So the utility category was one that really didn't have a lot of really good stuff in it, and it felt like for the most part you were kind of just forced to choose some simple things. Barbarian innovation, Barbarian utility recipe, Earthquake duration was moved to utility. Kick vulnerable duration moved to utility. Frenzy duration moved to utility. Flay duration moved to utility. Does that beef up Flay or does that bring it down? I can't tell. It depends on how many unique items you're using in your utility slots. I think overall that brings it up, right? Not down. Because you could put it on an amulet now. You could put it on your equipment. So like your boots, your pants, your gloves, your you could that I could literally get my flay duration up to like a minute or something stupid like that now. Nature's magic innovation for the druid. Hurricane size moved to utility. Lightning storm duration moved to utility. Petrify and cyclone armor active size moved to utility. Rogue innovation. Invigorating strike duration moved to utility. Twisting blades return time reduction moved to utility. Flurry size moved to utility, and Heartseeker duration moved to utility. Endgame bosses. For more updates on our endgame bosses, you can read more about those changes here. What? Oh. Did that literally just bring me back to the same article, like at a higher point? It did. Loot rewards. We already went over we already went over these, so. User interface and user experience. Floating combat text has been updated to be more consistent and more legible. Settings for floating combat text have been added to allow players to further customize what sort of floating text they want to see. The stats window now has a highlight for when the armor cap has been reached. Nice. The sections in the stat window can now be collapsed and expanded as desired. Mythic unique items now have a visual effects of a unique look in the inventory and stand out more. Legendary aspects can now be favored and filtered while interacting with the occultist. Shift-clicking a skill will now add 5 points, or as many as possible, to it in the skill tree. The notification for unlocking and upgrading aspects has been improved to be more prominent. Miscellaneous. Tortured gifts in the HellTide no longer contain obols. The season's Nightmare Dungeon rotation remains the same as previous season. The world bosses are now more resilient to damage. I will believe that when I see it, okay? This season, literally the world bosses would spawn and then immediately die. Experience rewards for side quests, including priority quests, i.e. gem crafting quests and class quests have been increased. Skills that grant immunity, Flame Shield, Blood Mist now only go on cooldown once the immunity effect ends. Potions can now be used while crowd controlled. Certain tutorial quests, e.g. quests for crafting a gem, are now tracked account-wide for completion status. Various dungeons have had tweaks to their layouts to further streamline them. More weapon types available, we already talked about that. Inherent affixes on multiple weapon types have been changed, so we already talked about that as well. They took off cooldown reduction off of totems, by the way. Might be a couple people pretty sad about that. I know for a fact that there's many people using focuses and totems to hit cooldown reduction breakpoints, and without that cooldown reduction breakpoint on there, I think you might not be able to hit it. So, yeah, sad. Barbarian bug fixes. Fixed an issue where Fury generation will malfunction when assigned to the Tactical Rallying Cry upgrade. Fixed an issue where the 5-second internal cooldown for the aspect of Ancestral Echoes was not listed in the aspect's description. Fixed an issue where the stack granted by the aspect of Limitless Rage could be inconsistently acquired. Fixed an issue where the charge could be used to bypass interaction channels, such as opening HellTide chests. Fixed an issue where Earthstriker's aspect could waste its guaranteed overpower trigger on auto-cast instances. This includes triggers from Overkill and a Ring of the Ravenous. Fixed an issue where the bonus Fury generated by the aspect of Berserker's Fury didn't grant Fortify when used in conjunction with the aspect of Numbing Wrath. Fixed an issue where Whirlwind didn't scale with passive and temporary attack speed. So Whirlwind is going to scale with attack speed now. Fixed an issue where the damage modifier for Rumble Glyph was additive when fighting crowd-controlled enemies. Rumble's damage bonus is now capped at 30% times. I wonder who could have saw that coming. Maybe the guy who like literally theory crafted a whole character based around the stupid Rumble 10% multiplier bonus. So unfortunately, it looks like all the Earthquake Barbarians are a little out in the water. That sucks, but it was a fun build for Season 4. Doesn't look like it's going to be a build for Season 5, spamming Earthquakes. Fixed an issue where Death Blow wasn't being consistently reset when enemies were killed by shockwaves created by Overkill. Druid fixed an issue where the tooltip aspect for Changeling Death was missing the damage type indicator when using advanced tooltips. Fixed an issue where projectiles from Tyrael's Might behaved erratically when using Shred. Fixed an issue where the tooltip description for Enhanced Poison Creeper was missing information. Fixed an issue where the Rabies did not fully benefit from the Toxic Claws passive. No surprise there, Rabies still sucks. Fixed an issue where the pull effect from Arida's Inexorable Will had a larger area effect than intended. Fixed an issue where the enhanced Rabies was scaling beyond 60% bonus if the damage over time duration was extended. Fixed an issue where the weapon drops for druids were skewed towards two-handed weapons. I actually did notice that. Fixed an issue where Lightning Storm didn't scale with passive and temporary attack speed. Channeling seals don't scale with attack speed, so I'm assuming that this is not an issue so much as something that they're changing in the game. Necromancer fixed an issue where Skeleton Reapers could get both bonuses when using the second upgrade option, so that's been fixed. Fixed an issue where the bonuses critical strike chance from Supreme Bone Storm did not trigger if Bone Storm was recast while another Bone Storm was still active. Fixed an issue where the Grasping Veins aspect could apply its bonus without using Corpse Tendrils. Fixed an issue where Hellbent Commander's effect could still function when removing points after entering a new zone. Fixed an issue where Aspect of Frenzied Dead had an irrelevant addition of summoning to its description. Fixed an issue where the cooldown reduction granted by Rapid Ossification didn't apply to Bone Spirit when cast with 100 or more Essence. Oh, interesting. I actually had this issue happen to me. I tried to use Rapid Ossification to reset Bone Spirit, and it didn't work. And well, that's really interesting. I didn't know that that was a bug. I thought it just didn't apply to it, or it just didn't work because of the way that the system's activated. So that's another interesting thing I'll have to take into account for my Bone Spirit Necromancer next season. Fixed an issue where the untimely death aspect was not gaining stacks when the player healed values smaller than 1% of your maximum life. Fixed an issue where Reap didn't scale with passive and temporary attack speed. Rogue fixed an issue where Methodical Dash didn't reduce the cooldown of dash by the full intended amount. Fixed an issue where the Puncture could generate multiple combo points when additional resource generation was high. Fixed an issue where Rapid Fire used with Scoundrel's Kiss and the repeating aspect behave inconsistently. Fixed an issue where the Shadow Clone didn't deal damage with Rapid Fire. Fixed an issue where the Rapid Fire did not have a range limit when used with Scoundrel's Kiss. Fixed an issue where Scoundrel's Leathers would properly function when a core skill hit a target that wasn't explicitly aimed at. Fixed an issue where Forceful Arrow made targets vulnerable after 2 hits instead of 3. Fixed an issue where Caltrops didn't trigger movement speed from the aspect of the explosive verve. Fixed an issue where the improved penetrating shot didn't display its duration on the icon of your action bar. Fixed an issue where Victimize was double dipping its damage multiplier. A compensatory buff to Victimize was made here, as mentioned above. So Victimize was bugged this season, and they did increase the damage of Victimize to make up for fixing the bug, but the bug for Victimize is no longer active. Sorcerer fixed an issue where Veer's Mastery applied to non-shock skills. Fixed an issue where Ice Armor's tooltip suggested the barrier value would increase when dealing damage. General fixed an issue where the aspect of the Crowded Sage was calculating using base life instead of maximum life. Fixed an issue where damage over time effects were receiving the bonus from damage stat twice. So damage over time was getting a double dip, so it's no longer getting a double dip. So we might see builds like the Bleed Barbarian, the Poison damage over time builds. I think every single damage over time build was pretty powerful this season. So there's a very good chance that all the damage over time builds basically got a huge nerf with this. Well, basically, like half damage. Also, Crowded Sage being calculated based on max life is huge. That's a huge buff for the Crowded Sage in general. Fixed an issue where Needle Flare aspect was doing excessive amounts of damage to bosses when you were being hit a smaller enemies. What is that even English? Fixed an issue where Needle Flare aspect was doing excessive amount of damage to bosses when you were being hit by a smaller enemy. I don't understand. But a Needle Flare aspect was doing more damage than intended, apparently. Fixed an issue where the elixir of anti-venom could be used alongside elixirs. Dang. They fixed my double elixir buff. Fixed an issue where the evade could trigger Yen's blessing. Fixed an issue where elite scorpion enemies with the teleporter affix didn't actually teleport. Fixed an issue where the high velocity aspect was not restricted to rogues. Fixed an issue where high velocity aspect was not restricted to rogues. Fixed an issue where items could disappear when opening many caches at once. Oh, that's not good. Fixed an issue where the Starlight did not properly work with overhealing effects. Ooh, Starlight might actually be useful now. For those of you guys who are unaware of how Starlight works, the Starlight aspect is one that I've always really been interested in, but unfortunately it never really worked properly because it didn't work with overhealing. And because it didn't work with overhealing, it was a kind of like a dead aspect, and it has been a dead aspect for a very long time. It basically makes it so that you gain 40 of your primary resource for every 20% of your life that you heal. But the problem with it is that when you filled up your healing completely and your health bar was full, it no longer gave you resource, and so it was useless. This change, if true, is big, because this means that you can set up a healing build that overheals yourself. So your goal is to just spam as much healing as you possibly can. And in the process, you're also going to spam resource back on yourself, which is going to fill your resource bar constantly. And there are tons of different characters that can heal themselves in a way like this, basically spamming as much healing as they possibly can. So keep your eyes on the Starlight aspect for Season 5. Because if the change works and it works properly, then Starlight might actually become one of the best generation resources pretty much out there, bar none, because it's going to encourage you to build healing, which will also, in fact, fill up your resource bar. So you get the best of both worlds. You get lots of healing and you get lots of resource in tandem with each other. So this is going to be a big one, I think, for a lot of builds that are relying on resources on a regular basis. Oh, thank you, Tommy Hogster. Fixed an issue where the aspect of Frosty Shrines couldn't be imprinted onto pants. User interface and user experience. Fixed an issue where there was no indication of how to unlock to tempering if the player failed to pick up their first recipe. The quest now properly guides the player to pick up a free recipe. Fixed an issue where in certain circumstances legendary materials could appear in the lost item stash but could not be withdrawn. Fixed an issue where certain tooltips such as for berserking did not properly indicate whether or not their damage was additive or multiplicative. Fixed an issue multiple instances where aspect tooltips had inconsistent info in their descriptions. Fixed issues where many unique items did not display class restrictions. Fixed an issue where incompatible mount armors could be selected in the Stable Master menu. Fixed an issue where materials from Season of Malignant could drop in the Malignant Burrow. Various performance and visual stability improvements. So overall, we've got a lot of interesting changes here, and I'll try to keep this brief because I'm starving. And I want to go get something to eat, so I'm probably going to go make myself a pizza, and then I'm going to play some more Elden Ring later if you guys are looking to join me. But let's do a quick recap on this. I'm going to try and blow through this as fast as I can, so keep up. I've already been at this for like 3 hours and 27 minutes. So obviously we got the Infernal Hordes coming. This is a PTR, so this is not the final changes. So keep in mind that these changes could be subject to change depending on current customer, our feedback. So if you don't like some of the changes, make sure you get out there and actually, talk about the changes, go into the forums and make angry posts and write your letter to the editor or whatever that you don't like the specific changes. Because customer, like our feedback, I keep saying customer, community feedback, that's the word I'm looking for, is important with this stuff. We've got the Infernal Hordes, which we're going to be testing, which really just sound like wave-based content, which sound kind of fun. We'll have to get in there and we'll have to play around with that as much as possible. There's definitely some interesting rewards that you can get, including the Greater Affix, but the Greater Affix does require level 100 to get access to those. They're bringing back the Travancore, so all the Travancore members, the fire, the ice, the lightning, the poison, and the physical versions. So, Mayfor Dragon Hand, Ice Fist, and so forth and so on. And of course, Pooh Hand. They're all coming back. They're going to be putting a whole bunch of new legendaries and unique items in the game. They said 50 plus. So I really don't know exactly how many that is because we'll have to take a look at them. I don't know how many we're going to find as we go along, but I'll try and keep up with them. There's going to be quality of life changes to the bosses. You can actually summon them again now without having to leave the room. They took away like a lot of the mats for Varshawn, and now it's just Malignant Hearts. So forth and so on. Beast in the Ice is going to become a regular boss instead of a dungeon, so that's pretty nice. They've also got some changes to the HellTides to make them a little bit better, but honestly, they're already really amazing. The changes they're making, though, like, is mainly just to HellTides and Whispers, like, in combination, so that the Whispers are inside the HellTide. The loot rewards for the bosses, they talked about the unique items basically being able to be acquired through like Whisper Caches, Purveyor of Curiosities, and Tortured Gifts, so you have a chance to get them. And then on top of that, you can also have a chance of getting Uber Uniques, which have been changed to Mythic Uniques and are now purple. I think that change is stupid. The Treasure Goblins are also getting some buffs here, so they can drop more items, also more gold, and they also have a chance to drop Scattered Prisms. Honestly, the Treasure Goblins need to be really looked at in terms of like what they are, because they're supposed to be special. They need to make the portal to the Land of Greed already. That's what they need to do. They need to have like a 1% chance to spawn a portal to the Land of Greed, and we need to just like have that in the game already, because that's what made the Treasure Goblin special in Diablo 3, and that's why everybody loved them, because it was a chance to go into the Land of Greed and, you know, fight the freaking Greed King or whatever freaking his name was. Weapons are getting changed a lot. More people are going to be able to use certain weapons. And on top of that, they're also changing the inherent bonuses on those weapons. Kind of a nerf for a lot of classes is the offhands are going to lucky hit instead of cooldown reduction. But that just kind of is par for the course, as they're trying to remove cooldown reduction across the board while they're also adding cooldown reduction across the board. So I don't really know what the hell they're thinking. They added some accessibility options for like auto navigation and audio navigation to like quest locations. The features offered for the testing, they're actually going to copy our characters over. So if you're looking to play around on the PTR, we're actually going to get character copy this time. So that's actually pretty useful. Last time they didn't do character copy, and it was a pain in the butt to test anything. They're also going to have the level 100 thing. So if you don't have a character to copy, you can just go on there, use the free, you know, like level to 100 thing and test things out that way. If you don't know how to install PTR, I can show you like really quickly. PTR is basically really simple. You just go here to this little drop down arrow right here, and you're just going to select Public Test Realm. That's literally the whole gist of it. You're going to have to install the Public Test Realm copy of the game, and then when Public Test Realm goes live, you just launch it this way. And then to switch back to the base game, you just click right here. That's super duper easy. I don't believe it's going to be available for console, so it's pretty much only PC. The patch notes, I didn't kind of like go over this briefly because these things are massive. We're going to have to get in and test a lot of this stuff, by the way. Right off the bat, they hit us with this tempering recipe, which is going to be available to everybody, which is going to give everybody access to critical strike damage, vulnerable damage, overpower, and ultimate damage, which was not available for all classes before. So you could take your item over to another character, and you could like put vulnerable damage from like a rogue or something, but you couldn't actually get these on like every character, so it's basically going to be active on all characters. It's a technicality at this point because everybody was just going over to the other characters to do it, but now you don't have to go over to the other characters to do it. Now you can just do it on the character that you're actually in. There's a lot of interesting uniques that were added. The Barbarian got a nice one for Iron Maelstrom, which kind of turns it into almost like Bone Storm. The Druid got a very interesting one for like free unlimited spirit while using Cataclysm, which should be really interesting, especially considering there's a lot of ways to enhance the duration of Cataclysm as well as reduce the cooldown of Cataclysm to make it almost permanent uptime. So we'll have to see how that turns out. The Necromancer got a very interesting unique item for the Bone Splinters, Bone Prison kind of scenario. It also has connotations to beef up any ability that also utilizes maximum essence, because it gives you a maximum essence of 2 for 8 seconds each time the Bone Splinters hit an enemy, which could be a rather large amount of additional damage. Although I'm kind of upset that they misspelled Trangul. Like, I don't know what's there. I mean, I guess there's a couple different ways to spell Trangul, so I guess they just chose whichever one they wanted. I mean, Trangul's avatar, which is the set in Diablo 2, is spelled Trang, not Trag. But then I'm pretty sure that if you look up like Tragul's avatar, it's a Diablo 3 set. So I guess they're going after the Diablo 3 set item, not the Diablo 2 set item. So I don't know, kind of interesting there. Just the little technicalities and stuff going on. They added some interesting stuff for the Necromancer, including the ability for the Golem to slam. This one is rather interesting right here, which is the Bone Spirit explodes inside the Bone Prison, dishing out additional damage and prioritizes monsters inside of the Bone Prison, which is kind of neat. They also added some more tempering specifically for the Necromancer, so things like Necrotic Carapace, which is nice for fortification, drain vitality, minion damage, etc. The Rogue got the Shroud of Condurus, which looks like it's going to be absolutely ridiculously OP because it applies immunity every single time a Dark Shroud grants. Basically, every time you make a Dark Shroud, you get immunity for 3 seconds. I'm not entirely sure how this is going to work out, but I'm sure it's going to be tested like crazy in the PTR. And from a couple of the things that I've seen within the PTR, as well as things that already exist within the game, it kind of seems like you can get permanent immunity with this, but I could be wrong. Nebulous, they also added these interesting aspects that give you movement speed bonus for potions. There's a bunch of potion stuff going on, like using a potion gives you healing, using a potion gives you movement speed, like you can use a potion while you're inside of a crowd control effect now. There's also an item that literally makes it so that using a potion grants you unstoppable. Like there's a bunch of crazy things going on with potions. They're trying to push potions, I guess. They also made a lot of changes to the Rogue in general. I mean, there's a lot of new stuff that's coming up, and we're going to have to test out a lot of this stuff, as well as new tempering manuals, which may or may not have huge changes to the character. The Sorceress got this unique item, which is for Chain Lightning. It's kind of odd, though, because they're only showing us 1 or 2 of the unique items, but they said there's going to be 50 in the PTR. I'm not sure if what they meant is there going to be 50 plus unique items in Season 5, or if we're only going to get a certain number now and then they're going to introduce the rest later, or I'm not certainly sure what's going on, because they definitely didn't show us all the unique items in the patch. The Sorceress seems to have gotten a lot of changes involving, I'm trying to think here, damage bonuses that seem to help with bosses. I did notice a lot of damage bonuses that help with bosses. They also got some interesting new tempering recipes, like the Hydra bonuses, which is neat. The Arc Lash attacking twice. The chance to cast additional charged bolts was moved. Some things were just moved around. Some things were added. They also added some lucky hit bonuses and things like that. Some crowd control bonuses as well through the elemental control aspects. Some of the stuff that they did is weird, like for the Barbarian, they buffed up Flay again. I don't even know why. But they also fixed, actually I do know why, because they fixed the damage over time double dipping. So one of the things you might notice when you get into the PTR is basically all damage over time is going to go down quite a bit. So if you were doing, I don't know, 1 billion damage with your bleed damage, rupture before, chances are you're probably only going to be getting a half, 500 million instead, because it was double dipping before, so it was basically getting double the multipliers, which meant double the damage, right? So they take away the double damage, and now you're down to a more realistic value. So we'll have to see how that works. They also nerfed Flay by taking Hemorrhage and putting a cap on it. So this is something that's across the board with basically everything, is they were throwing caps on just about every single major multiplier. They capped Hemorrhage, they capped a bunch of different multipliers, and going forward, we'll see that. If you want to see the full patch notes, by the way, you're more than welcome to watch the 3.5 hours prior, but I'm trying to keep this brief because there's so much to go over. And we're definitely going to be, obviously hopping in for the PTR when it starts so that we can get a full understanding of the way these changes fix stuff. Landslide got a buff, Shred got a buff, Pulverize got a buff, Tornado got a buff, Lightning Storm got a buff, Hurricane got a buff. They made it so that you could cast the companions while moving. Lacerate got a huge change into a more of the 7-sided strike from Diablo 3. which it probably needed because the original version of Lacerate was pretty crappy. Cataclysm got many buffs. Grizzly Rage got the same nerf that Flame Shield got, which is basically where the duration starts after the ability is over, which means it's going to be a lot more difficult to keep a permanent uptime on Grizzly Rage. Debilitating Roar got a huge nerf from 70% damage reduction to 40%, which I'm not really sure why it deserved that. Earthen Bulwark got a huge buff for the maximum life and so forth and so on. Cyclone Armor got a buff. They're separating out the companions and the skills so that you can actually have like the regular skills by themselves and the companions by themselves, or you can still do both if you want to, but they're trying to make it so that you don't have to use the companions. Aftershock got a small buff by decreasing the delay between the landslides. There's definitely a bunch of damage reduction increases across the board in Vigilance, Iron Fury, and Heightened Senses. Boulder got a buff when it comes to the Metamorphic Stone aspects, so you should have more damage there. There's another one of the capped aspects for the multiplier. Thunderstruck got capped at 40%, which is a pretty huge nerf across the board to druids. Anybody who was getting the Thunderstruck buff higher than 40%, your damage is now going to be a hell of a lot lower. Across the board, though, it looked like the druid was getting some decent buffs for damage reduction as well, though, and damage increases across the board for things, probably to make up for the fact that they capped out Thunderstruck. Necromancer, Book of the Dead, Necromancer minions can now overpower is pretty massive. I was actually kind of surprised about that one. I didn't even really know they couldn't overpower, but that should be huge. The slam for the golem is in here. They also talked about that. There was a pretty interesting buff to Sever, too, that turned it into like a mobility skill, which was kind of interesting. And they buffed up Sever as well. They buffed up Blight. They buffed up Bloodwave. But don't make a mistake, is that the damage on Blight and Sever are still going to be lower than what they are now because they took the main multiplier, which was the blighted aspect, and they basically nerfed it from 120% to 50%. And damage over time was double dipping, which shadow damage is damage over time. So shadow damage might actually be a lot less despite these buffs in the PTR. We'll have to see. As you can see here, there's the Shadow Blight reduced from 10 to 8, which is actually a really good buff, and the damage increased by 44%. But then the Blighted aspect nerfed right there. So, and there's a developer note. They're trying to make up for the fact that they nerfed the aspect. Aspect of Bursting Bones, which is an aspect that's always been kind of laughed at, and I've actually tried to play around with it too, and it just doesn't work, is now based off of weapon damage, so the aspect of Bursting Bones might actually do some decent damage now. There's some changes to the aspect of Grasping Veins. It got nerfed a little bit, and also a timer got put on it because apparently it was working all the time instead of on a timer. They did a couple buffs to some of the unique items. Some of them seem like nerfs, but overall okay. The Wither node for the druids, or for the necromancers, got a big nerf, which is they got capped at 1200 intelligence. So now the Wither node no longer stacks past 1200 intelligence, which most necromancers hit like without breaking a sweat. So kind of a silly one, to be perfectly honest. The Rogue got some big buffs to the Aerostorm, including the Aerostorm working with ultimate skills. And on top of that, the ultimate skill benefiting from the Aerostorm damage bonus. So if you're trying to use, say, like Rain of Arrows, I think was the one they specifically stated. Rain of Arrows now gets the bonus from your maximum Aerostorms. So doing a maximum Aerostorm build along with Rain of Arrows could result in some pretty crazy Rain of Arrow damage. They also changed the way around the way a lot of the skills worked, like Blade Shift. They did a lot of work on Shadow Step, Flurry, Dash. I mean, there's tons of changes here for the Rogue. It looked like most of them were decent changes, not bad changes overall. Dark Shroud is one that I'm definitely going to say keep an eye on, because it looks like Dark Shroud might actually be the most overpowered skill in the game coming up soon, but we'll certainly find out. They did increase the duration of Poison Imbuement, and they changed one of the Poison Imbuement's main passives, which was the attack speed one, to work more differently. So now it not only gives attack speed, but it also gives other things as well. So I think that's in here somewhere. Rain of Arrows got its casting speed reduced, its lucky hit chance increased, and its cooldown reduced. There's so much stuff in here, it's hard to like mix it all up. There's definitely some buffs in the list, like this one right here where Malice now affects knockdown enemies as well as vulnerable enemies. Alchemical Advantage, this is the one where you increase attack speed. It now not only increases your attack speed, it also increases your lucky hit chance as well, so that's interesting. The second wind passive now gets you maximum life as barrier instead of lucky hit chance. Not really my personal favorite because I did like the lucky hit chance bonus because it was fun for lucky hit chance builds, but I guess having a barrier is not terrible. Aftermath, while ultimate skills on your action bar, you heal for 0.5 for maximum life every second, and you gain 25 energy. So basically, they turned the ultimate skill passive Aftermath into a heal for rogues. So it's kind of interesting. 0.5% isn't really a lot, and I can tell you for a fact that I've actually utilized an ability just like this, which is Warmth. And Warmth is also 0.5% of your life, and it stacks up to 1.5%, and it's really not all that great. See you, Rosie. Weapon Master, dagger damage to healthy enemies increased from 5 to 6. I mean, there's some stuff in here. Victimize got nerfed because it was apparently double dipping or something. It was kind of bugged. So they also increased the explosion damage of Victimize to compensate for the bug. It looks like they're not specifically trying to nerf these abilities so much as they're trying to move away from bugged effects, which I guess we'll find out. They also changed some of the Cutthroat passive, like back and forth between Cutthroat and Marksman skills is duration based now, so it's actually pretty nice. Sowing damage increases to arrow storms across the board to go along with the stuff they've increased. Noxious Ice getting buffed was kind of nice. Tons of changes to Dark Shroud. Even the explosion damage on Volatile Shadows got increased. So I guess we'll find out about that. They also seem to have included like stun grenades and a lot of stuff as well. Flurry changes were massive across the board, and then on top of that, they also added in a lot of interesting things with the stun grenades, the smoke grenades. The smoke grenades also counting as poison damage too, which was really interesting. So you can now turn the smoke grenades into poison damage, which is fun. They changed Word of a Con too to now it always imbues your Rain of Arrows is always imbued with all imbuements at once and receives your Arrow Storm benefits right there. So that's how you could apply your Arrow Storm benefits to your ultimate skill, Rain of Arrows. Right here, this is the one for Tricks of the Trade, so now that it lasts for 8 seconds. So instead of going back and forth, Marksman, Cutthroat, Marksman, Cutthroat, Marksman, Cutthroat, now you can just go Cutthroat, gain the buff, Marksman, gain the buff, and now you can do whatever the hell you want for 8 seconds. And as long as you use one Marksman and one Cutthroat skill within 8 seconds, you should be able to maintain that buff across the board, so that's nice. It matches up more similarly to the key passive, which is also the same way. It's a duration-based. Sorceress got some interesting changes to like boss damage. They got a couple little boss damage things here or there. They also got the extra Hydra heads. Some interesting changes, but nothing really like too standout-ish. Should be some fun chain lightning stuff. I'm playing around with that new unique. Should be interesting. The ice armor got a buff to 40%, but now it no longer increases based on damage. The big nerf to Flame Shield, so all you infinite Flame Shield sorks, boo-hoo. It was a stupid way to play the game in the first place. Yeah, I'm calling you out. Wizards Blizzard got an interesting buff to scale off of maximum mana, so that's really interesting. Teleport got a cooldown increase, but a damage increase, which was interesting. So like Oculus builds. One of the big changes though was Veer's Mastery, which Veer's Mastery got changed to be more of like a ranged or melee skill instead of only a melee skill. So you can build a lightning sork and not be directly in melee range, which is interesting. Lots of movement speed bonuses across the board too. I noticed like everywhere, like tons of movement speed bonuses. Trying to think if there's anything else super crazy in here for the sorceress. They capped a bunch of her stuff out. So elemental summoners capped at 30%. They also capped the Burning Instinct at 40% times. Sea-Slit Conduit is capped at 60% times. Basically, like I said, they're capping a whole bunch of these things out, and that's pretty much what's going on. Ring of the Starless Skies is an uber unique, Nick. Yes. Tempering updates, they moved a whole bunch of stuff to the utility. So if you're unaware of how the tempering system works, like everything has a category, and in a category, everything. And basically certain items only have access to specific categories. So they're moving Flay Duration from bleed augments over to the utility, which is a really big one and kind of crazy because it's going to be a lot of additional damage for Flay Barbarians. Some of these are good, some of these are odd, some I'm not really sure about. Like, obviously you can get Hurricane Size in utility now, Lightning Storm. I think what it comes down to is that some of these things weren't really weapon augment, like worthy. If you're familiar with Seinfeld, you know, sponge worthy. They're not sponge worthy. So basically they're moving them to the lesser used utility aspects. Some of these I can understand moving over to the utility aspects, like Frenzy Duration. But Flay Duration is a massive damage bump for Flay Barbarians, and putting it in the utility means that you're going to be able to get even more Flay Duration than you could before, and it's going to be absolutely insane, because now you can get the Flay Duration on your utility, and then you could put something else amazing on your weapons. So, I think Flay Barbarians got a huge buff, despite the fact that they got a huge nerf. We'll have to see on Flay Barbarians. There is some interesting stuff in here for the miscellaneous fixes. Where was that at? There's so many crazy things in here, and I've been going over all of it, and my brain's starting to go numb. Where is the highlights? This one right here, which is for the Earthquake Barbarians. So for those of you who were stacking Earthquakes, as many Earthquakes as you possibly could to get your multipliers high as you possibly could, it's now capped at 30% times. So stacking as many Earthquakes as you can no longer does anything. There was... Where was the other one in here? I think it was like a really important one for everybody, but... Bone Storm. I don't really know what the hell that one's about. I'd have to take a look at that one. This is a bug that I know a lot of Necromancers have been utilizing in Season 4, so that one's going to be gone. And this is a pretty big one for Bone Spirit Necromancers, because it was an issue with Bone Spirit not utilizing the rapid ossification properly. And so now it will, which is going to be pretty big for resetting Bone Spirit to get that sub 7 second Bone Spirit, for those of you who've played around with Bone Spirit, tried to make it work. Trying to pull out like the really important ones in here. There's really, this is one of the big ones right here. So fixed an issue where Victimize was double dipping its damage multiplier. A compensatory buff to Victimize was made here as mentioned. So Victimize is going to be nerfed in Season 5. This one right here is pretty big across the board for anybody who was utilizing damage over time in Season 4. In Season 5, it looks like damage over time effects are no longer going to be dipping into the bonus pool that they were of damage bonus twice. It's probably why damage over time effects were so overpowered this season, and it looks like they're going to be a lot less overpowered next season. They did fix the double elixir that we were utilizing, so the elixir of anti-venom that you could use alongside regular elixirs can no longer be used. Sadness. I think that's pretty much it. Oh yeah, this one right here. This is a big one that you're going to want to keep your eyes on, which is the fixed an issue where Starlight did not work properly with overhealing effects. So Starlight is an aspect that gives you resource based upon how much you heal yourself, and the more you heal yourself, the more resource you get. Now, there are certain characters that can highly take advantage of this, and things like Andariel's Visage, Druids with their shape-shifting healing. There's tons of different ways. You could be using the on-hit healing. You could be using potions. There's tons of ways that you can heal yourself and potentially restore your resource. And before, what happened is when you reach your maximum hit points, it would not give you any more resource because you weren't, the overhealing wasn't counting. If they really fixed it, which I'm going to test, Starlight might just be the most overpowered resource generation ability in the game at this point, because not only will it work exceedingly well to give you more resource, but by utilizing this aspect, you are going to be healing yourself, which is certainly not a bad thing. So you're going to heal yourself and give yourself resource at the same time, which is, like the mythical killing two birds with one stone situation. And I think that's pretty much it. I'm going to go take a break and get myself something to eat. These patch notes are massive. I will join you guys on June 25th is what they said. He said next Tuesday, but next Tuesday is the 2nd, but then he specifically said the 25th. So PTR should be on the 25th, and I'll join you guys there. We'll be testing out all this stuff, playing around with these changes. Since they're going to copy over my characters, I'll be able to test out a lot of these things, like the Bone Spirit changes, the Rain of Arrow changes, my Flay Barbarian, to see what his damage is like in the new version, and so forth and so on. So we'll definitely be able to get some of this stuff tested out and played with. As always, I do appreciate you guys and gals joining me for these fun campfire chats and spending 4 hours with me going over patch notes. Hopefully you guys got what you needed out of this. And as always, I do appreciate you guys and gals watching me. Be sure to hit that like button. Be sure to hit the subscribe button. And as always, keep watching.